What's up, story lovers? Welcome to Monkey DFIC. In today's video, we have a fantastic tale for you. What if Nico Robin fell in love with Luffy at Enies lobby and he made her the queen of the thousand sunny? If this is your first time here, consider subscribing and hitting the bell icon so you never miss a story. And if you're a returning viewer, thank you for your continued support. Alright, let's jump right into it. Chapter 1, Declaration. Robin couldn't breathe. The sea salt air of Enies lobby filled her lungs, but it felt like drowning anyway. Standing on the Tower of Justice balcony, she stared down at them, her crew, her friends, fighting through impossible odds. For her. Always for her. Robin. Luffy's voice cut through everything else. Through the gunfire. Through her doubts. Through 20 years of running. Say you want to live. Her hands gripped the stone railing as tears streamed down her face. How many times had she thought it would be easier to just disappear? But now. I want to live, she screamed back, her voice breaking. Take me to sea with you. And there he was, her captain, grinning that impossible grin even as the world government's strongest assassin surrounded him. He didn't look scared. He looked like he was having the time of his life. That was the moment. Looking back later, Robin would recognize it as the precise instant something shifted inside her. Not just gratitude. Something warmer, brighter, more terrifying. The battle that followed became a blur of violence and desperation. Robin fought alongside her crew, her nakama, using her devil fruit powers to snap spines and crush throats of those who stood between them and freedom. The guilt she normally felt at taking lives vanished. These men threatened her home, and her home was no longer a place, but these people. This crew. This boy with the straw hat who refused to let her die. Robin. This way. Nami shouted, grabbing her wrist and pulling her toward the edge of the judicial tower. Below them, the bridge of hesitation stretched across the massive waterfall that separated Enies lobby from the rest of the world. Marines swarmed everywhere. We need to jump. Nami said. Robin looked at the navigator's face, bruised, bloody, but determined. Then she glanced back at Luffy, still fighting Lucci, the CP9's strongest agent. We can't leave without, he'll catch up, Nami interrupted. You know he always does. Robin nodded. She did know that. In the short time she'd been with the Straw Hat Pirates, she'd learned that Luffy defied logic, probability, and sometimes the laws of physics themselves. If he said he would win, he would win. They jumped. The fall seemed to last forever. Robin created a chain of arms to guide their descent, cushioning the impact as they landed among the rest of the crew on the bridge of hesitation. Frankie, the blue-haired cyborg who'd helped them reach Enies lobby, shot his weapons at approaching Marines while Sanji and Zoro fought back-to-back. Where's Luffy? Chopper asked, his eyes wide with worry as he wrapped a bandage around Usopp's arm. Still fighting, Robin answered, her voice calm despite the storm of emotions inside her. He'll win. And he did. The tower exploded behind them as Lucci finally fell. Robin's heart stopped when she didn't immediately see Luffy emerge from the smoke and debris. The word echoed in Robin's mind as they ran toward the edge of the bridge where the Going Merry waited for them. The little caravel that had carried them this far, somehow sailing itself to rescue them when all seemed lost. As they jumped aboard, Robin found herself standing next to Luffy. Without thinking, she placed her hand on his shoulder. Thank you, she whispered. He turned to her, his wide eyes meeting hers. For once, he didn't grin or laugh. He just looked at her with an intensity that made her breath catch. I'll always come for you, Robin. Always. The moment broke as cannon fire erupted around them. The Buster Call had arrived, the government's ultimate weapon of destruction, 10 massive warships commanded by vice admirals, ordered to obliterate Enies lobby completely, and them with it. We need to move. Nami shouted, taking the helm. But the Mary was dying. They all knew it. The little ship had pushed beyond its limits to save them one last time, and now its broken keel and patched hull could barely stay afloat amid the turbulent waters. Robin watched as Luffy placed his hand on the mast, whispering something to the ship. She couldn't hear the words, but she saw the tears in his eyes. She'd never seen him cry before, not like this, quiet tears of loss rather than his usual dramatic wailing. It struck her then how much Luffy loved this ship, how much he loved everything and everyone he considered his. She'd never met anyone who loved so fiercely, so completely, without reservation or calculation. What would it be like to be loved like that? The thought snuck in before she could stop it, and Robin found herself blushing. She turned away quickly, focusing on helping Nami navigate through the bombardment. They escaped the buster call by the narrowest of margins, sailing into open water as Enies' lobby burned behind them. But the Going Merry couldn't go any further. "I'm sorry," Mary's voice seemed to whisper on the wind as the ship finally broke apart beneath them. They gave the Merry a Viking funeral, watching as flames consumed the little caravel that had carried them through so many adventures. Robin stood beside Luffy as he sobbed openly, his shoulders shaking. Without thinking, she placed her arm around him, pulling him close. He didn't resist, leaning into her touch in a way that felt both natural and shocking. The rest of the crew was too lost in their own grief to notice this small intimacy. "I'm sorry about Mary," she whispered. "It's okay," he said, wiping his face with his arm. "Mary got to go on adventures with friends. That's all anyone can ask for." Robin stared at him, struck by the simple wisdom in his words. That's all anyone can ask for. Adventures with friends. After a lifetime of running, of being the demon child no one wanted, was it really possible that her greatest adventure was just beginning? Water 7 welcomed them like heroes, though Robin still felt uncomfortable with the attention. Too many years as a fugitive had taught her to stay in shadows, to avoid being noticed. But now people cheered as they walked through the streets, thanking them for standing against the world government. "They're going to put prices on our heads after this," she murmured to Nami as they shopped for new clothes. Her previous outfit had been destroyed in the battle. "Higher than before, you mean," Nami replied with a wink. "I bet Luffy's bounty is going to skyrocket. He did declare war on the world government for you, after all." Robin felt her cheeks warm. "He would have done the same for any of us." Nami gave her a sidelong glance. "True. But the way he looked when he thought we might lose you. I've never seen him like that before. Not even when we almost lost Mary." Robin didn't know how to respond to that, so she pretended to be intensely interested in a purple blouse on a nearby rack. "Robin," Nami said, her voice softer now, "I've seen how you look at him too." "I don't know what you mean," Robin replied automatically, the denial falling from her lips before she could even consider its truth. Nami just smiled. "Sure you don't. Just, be careful with him, okay? Luffy's strong in a fight, but in other ways, he's innocent," Robin finished for her. "I was going to say, an idiot about anything that isn't food, fighting, or adventure, but innocent works too." They both laughed, and the moment passed. But Nami's words stayed with Robin as they returned to Iceberg's shipyard where the others were gathered around something covered by a massive tarp. Luffy exclaimed, bouncing with excitement. "Hurry up and show us, Ice Pops." Iceberg, the mayor of Water 7 and master shipwright, smiled indulgently. "Patience, Straw Hat. A ship like this deserves a proper introduction." With theatrical timing, he pulled away the tarp to reveal the most beautiful ship Robin had ever seen. A brigantine with a lion figurehead, twice the size of the Going Merry but with the same cheerful spirit somehow embodied in its design. "She's beautiful," Robin whispered. "The Thousand Sunny," Iceberg announced proudly. "Built with Adam wood, the strongest timber in the world. She'll carry you to the ends of the Grand Line and back." Luffy whooped with joy, immediately stretching his arms to launch himself onto the figurehead. The others followed more conventionally, climbing the gangplank to explore their new home. Robin hung back, watching her crewmates race around the deck like excited children. Frankie was showing off the ship's features. Apparently, he had helped design many of its special capabilities. "Aren't you going aboard?" She turned to find Iceberg standing beside her, his intelligent eyes studying her face. "I was just taking a moment," she replied. "It's been an eventful few days." He nodded. "You know, when Tom built Gold Roger's ship, he said something I've never forgotten. He said, 'A ship carries people's dreams.'" Robin smiled. "Is that why you became a shipwright?" "Partly. But I think it's also why you all fought so hard for the Going Merry. And why this new ship will become just as important to you." He paused. "Especially now that you've finally found a crew worth staying with." She looked up sharply, but his expression held no accusation, only understanding. "How did you? Your bounty posters have been circulating for years. The Devil Child, they called you. Always alone. Always running." He shrugged. "Now you're not running anymore." Robin looked back at the Thousand Sunny, at her crewmates exploring every inch of their new home. At Luffy, perched on the figurehead, pointing excitedly at something on the horizon. "No," she agreed softly. "I'm not running anymore. Robin. Robin, come see my room." Luffy's voice carried across the deck as Robin finally boarded the Sunny. He came bounding toward her, grabbing her hand without hesitation and pulling her toward the men's quarters. "It's got a real bed and everything." "Luffy, I don't think," she began, but he was already dragging her through the door. The men's quarters were spacious compared to the cramped conditions on Merry, with actual beds instead of hammocks. Luffy proudly showed her his bunk, already a mess despite having only been aboard for an hour. "See? I put my hat here when I sleep," he said, demonstrating by placing his treasured straw hat carefully on a small hook by the bed. "And look! Frankie built us shelves for our stuff." His enthusiasm was infectious, and Robin found herself smiling as he showed her every detail of the room as if it were a grand palace. The others were exploring elsewhere, leaving them momentarily alone. "It's wonderful, Luffy," she said. "You seem happy." He plopped down on his bed, bouncing slightly. "I am. We got you back, we got an awesome new ship, and we're gonna have so many more adventures." His expression suddenly turned serious, an unusual look for him. "I was really scared we were gonna lose you, Robin. When you're Nakama, you share the good stuff and the bad stuff. That's how it works." It was such a Luffy way of seeing things, straightforward, uncomplicated by doubt or nuance. And yet, in its simplicity, it held a profound truth that 20 years of scholarly learning hadn't taught her. "I understand that now," she said quietly. "I won't leave again." His frown instantly vanished, replaced by his signature grin. "Good. Because I'd just come get you again anyway, and that'd be a pain." She laughed, surprising herself with the sound. "Yes, I suppose it would be inconvenient to declare war on the world government twice." Luffy shrugged. "I'd do it 100 times. You're my Nakama." There was that word again. Nakama. Crew. Family. Friend. In Japanese, it encompassed all these things and more. But as Robin looked at Luffy's smiling face, she wondered if it was enough to describe what she was beginning to feel for him. Before she could respond, Nami's voice called from above deck. "Everyone! Come quick! We've got company." When Robin emerged onto the deck, she immediately saw what had caused Nami's alarm. A ship was approaching from the east, a sleek, dark vessel with blood-red sails. Not a marine ship, but definitely not friendly. "Pirates," Zoro confirmed, his hand already on his swords. "Not from around here." Usopp peered through his goggles. "That flag. I don't recognize it. Some kind of snake eating its own tail." The approaching ship was close enough now that they could see figures moving on its deck. One stepped forward, a tall, lean man with silver hair that caught the sunlight. "Nico Robin," the man called back. "We've come for Nico Robin." Robin felt a chill run through her. After everything they'd just been through at Enies' lobby, after finally believing she could have peace with her crew, someone else was hunting her. "See?" Luffy said, jumping down from the railing to stand beside her. "This is exactly what I meant. If you'd gone off on your own, you'd be dealing with these jerks alone. Now you've got us." Despite the tension of the moment, Robin felt warmth bloom in her chest at his words. "Yes, I do." "What should we do, Luffy?" Nami asked, her climatact already assembled in her hands. "We just got this ship. I'd rather not get into a battle before we've even left Water 7. Luffy cracked his knuckles. "They want Robin. They can't have her. Simple." "Perhaps we should find out what they want first," Robin suggested. "They might be reasonable." Sanji snorted. "Reasonable pirates? That'll be the day." "Even so," Robin insisted. "Knowledge is power." Luffy looked at her for a moment, then nodded. "Okay. We'll talk first. But if they try anything..." He punched his fist into his palm. The strange ship drew alongside the Thousand Sunny, close enough that they could clearly see its crew. They were an unusual-looking bunch, not the typical rough pirates Robin was accustomed to seeing. They wore matching black coats with the same Ouroboros symbol embroidered on the sleeves. "Permission to come aboard," the silver-haired man called. He appeared to be in his 40s, with aristocratic features and intelligent eyes. "Why should we let you?" Luffy challenged. "Because I have information that Miss Nico will find extremely valuable. Information about the Void Century." Robin couldn't hide her reaction. The Void Century, the 100-year period that history had forgotten, that the world government forbade anyone from researching. Finding the truth about those missing years was her life's goal, the reason she'd learned to read the poneglyphs. "It's a trap," Zoro muttered. "Has to be." "I agree," Nami said. "After Enies' lobby? This is way too convenient." But Robin stepped forward. "Let him aboard, Luffy. I want to hear what he has to say." Luffy studied her face. "You sure?" She nodded. "If it's a trap, we'll deal with it together. Right?" His serious expression melted into a grin. "Right." The silver-haired man came aboard alone, though his crew remained visibly armed on their own ship. Up close, Robin could see that his coat was made of expensive material, and he carried himself with the confidence of someone used to command. "My name is Lysander," he introduced himself with a slight bow. "Captain of the Eternal Serpent and humble scholar." "You don't look like a pirate," Frankie observed suspiciously. Lysander smiled thinly. "Not all who sail under the black flag fit the stereotype, Mr. Cyborg. Just as not all archaeologists are doddering old men in spectacles." He turned to Robin. "Which brings me to you, Miss Nico. The last survivor of O'Hara and possibly the only person alive who can read the language of the ancients. What do you know about the Void Century?" Robin asked, cutting directly to the point. "Straight to business." "I appreciate that." Lysander reached into his coat, causing every straw hat to tense. He slowly withdrew a small black cube. "I know that the answers you seek are locked in objects like this one." Robin's eyes widened. "A poneglyph cube?" "But they're massive stones, not a poneglyph itself," Lysander corrected. "A key to finding one. One that the world government doesn't know exists." "And why would you share this with me?" Robin asked, her voice cooled despite the excitement building inside her. "Because I need you to read it, of course. My organization has been collecting these artifacts for decades, but without someone who can decipher the language." He shrugged elegantly. "We've hit a wall." "So what's the deal?" Luffy demanded. "You want Robin to read your mystery cube?" I want to propose an alliance, Lysander replied. The Ouroboros Society has resources, information, and protection to offer. In exchange, we ask only that Miss Nico share her unique talents with us. No, Luffy said immediately. Lysander raised an eyebrow. I beg your pardon. Robin's not going anywhere with you. She's my nakama. Robin felt that warm feeling again, stronger now. But she placed a hand gently on Luffy's arm. Let me handle this, she murmured. She turned to Lysander. I appreciate your offer, but my place is here with my crew. However, I would be willing to examine your artifact if you leave it with us. When I've decoded it, we could arrange to meet again. Lysander's pleasant expression hardened slightly. I'm afraid that won't work for us, Miss Nico. The cube is too valuable to leave in untrained hands. No offense to your colorful companions. Sounds like offense to me, Sanji growled. If your offer requires me to leave my crew, then I must decline, Robin said firmly. As my captain stated, my place is here. Lysander sighed. I was hoping to avoid unpleasantness. He snapped his fingers, and suddenly the air was filled with a high-pitched whine. Robin felt her knees buckle as an invisible force seemed to press down on her. Robin! Luffy shouted, reaching for her even as he too staggered. See prism technology, Lysander explained calmly, seemingly unaffected. Modified to create a field rather than requiring physical contact. Quite effective against devil fruit users, isn't it? Robin struggled to stay upright as her powers deserted her. Around her, Luffy, Chopper, and Brook were similarly affected, while the others appeared merely uncomfortable. You bastard! Sanji snarled, launching himself at Lysander despite the pressure. The silver-haired man sidestepped with surprising speed. I truly hoped for cooperation, but my orders are clear. If Miss Nico won't come willingly, we are to bring her by force. More men were swinging aboard from the Eternal Serpent now, each wearing devices on their wrists that presumably protected them from the effects of whatever technology was weakening the devil fruit users. Take the woman, Lysander commanded. Kill the others if they resist. Robin tried to fight as two men grabbed her arms, but without her powers, she was at a severe disadvantage. Still, her years on the run had taught her conventional fighting as well, and she managed to drive her knee into one attacker's stomach. Despite being weakened, Luffy was still fighting furiously. Get away from her! He roared, his rubber powers failing him but his determination undiminished as he physically tackled one of Robin's captors. Zoro and Sanji were cutting through the borders with ruthless efficiency, while Nami used her climb attack to electrocute a cluster of them on the port side. Frankie, seemingly less affected than the devil fruit users, was sending attackers flying with powerful punches. Robin broke free momentarily, stumbling toward Luffy. The device, she gasped. There must be a transmitter somewhere on their ship. Luffy nodded, understanding immediately. Frankie, he shouted. Blast their ship. With pleasure, Straw Hat. Frankie positioned himself at the railing, chest plate opening to reveal his cannon. Frankie Radical Beam. The energy blast tore into the side of the Eternal Serpent, causing a massive explosion. Almost immediately, the pressure-weakening Robin began to fade. No! Lysander shouted, his composed demeanor cracking. He drew a slender blade that gleamed with an odd blue light. I won't fail this mission. He lunged at Robin, but Luffy intercepted him, his rubber powers returning just in time to stretch his arm for a devastating punch. Gomu Gomu no pistol. The blow caught Lysander square in the chest, sending him crashing into the mast. But the man was tougher than he looked, recovering quickly and countering with a slash of his strange blade. Luffy dodged, but not completely. The blade caught his shoulder, drawing blood and causing him to wince in pain. See Prism Stone Blade, Lysander explained with a cruel smile. Not enough to completely negate your powers, but enough to hurt you like a normal human. Robin, her own powers fully restored, crossed her arms in her signature pose. Ocho Fleur, clutch. 8 arms sprouted from Lysander's body, bending him backward until he cried out in pain. But he didn't break as enemies usually did under this attack. Instead, he laughed. You'll have to do better than that, Miss Nico. With shocking strength, he fought against her grip. My organization has studied your abilities extensively. We came prepared. Then how about this? Luffy appeared above him, both arms stretched far behind him. Gomu Gomu no Bazooka. The double palm strike hit Lysander with such force that Robin's sprouted arms dissipated as he was sent flying off the ship, crashing into the water with a massive splash. Around them, the battle was turning decisively in their favor. With the mysterious weakening field gone, the straw hats were making short work of the boarders. Those still capable of movement were retreating to their damaged vessel. They're running away. Usopp cheered from the crow's nest, where he'd been providing covering fire with his slingshot. Let them go, Luffy said, breathing heavily as he watched the eternal serpent begin to pull away, its sails smoking from Frankie's attack. We need to get out of here before they come back with friends. Robin approached him, concern etched on her face. You're bleeding. He glanced at his shoulder where Lysander's blade had cut him. It's nothing. Are you okay? Thanks to you, she said softly. Again. Their eyes met, and for a moment, everything else seemed to fade away, the retreating enemy ship, their cheering crewmates, even the pain of their injuries. Robin felt a strange flutter in her chest that had nothing to do with the exertion of battle. I told you, Luffy said, his voice uncharacteristically quiet. I'll always come for you. The moment broke as Chopper rushed over, medical bag already open. Luffy. Robin. Let me see those injuries. As the little reindeer fussed over them, Nami took command. We should set sail immediately. Those creeps might have friends nearby. Agreed, Robin said, wincing slightly as Chopper cleaned a cut on her arm she hadn't even noticed receiving. The Ouroboros Society isn't a group I'm familiar with, but they're clearly well-resourced and determined. And they want Robin, Luffy added, his expression serious again. Which means we need to be ready when they come back. If they come back, Usopp corrected hopefully. Maybe they'll give up. Zoro snorted as he sheathed his swords. Not likely. Did you see that guy's eyes? He's not the type to quit after one defeat. Then we'll kick his ass again, Luffy declared with simple confidence. And again after that, if we have to. Robin watched him as Chopper bandaged his shoulder, struck again by his unwavering certainty. Monkey D, Luffy didn't deal in doubts or maybes. In his world, you decided what was important and then you fought for it with everything you had. And somehow, she had become something important to him. This is amazing, Sanji-kun. Nami exclaimed as they all gathered in the sunny spacious new dining room that evening. The cook had outdone himself for their first dinner aboard their new ship, preparing a feast that rivaled anything they'd eaten in the finest restaurants of Water 7. Melarine. Nami Swan's praise fills my heart with joy. Sanji twirled, hearts practically visible in his eyes before he composed himself to address Robin. And for you, Robin Chuan, I've prepared a special coffee soufflé with chocolate sauce that complements the delicate flavor notes of your favorite blend. Thank you, Cook-san, Robin replied with a gentle smile. It looks delicious. From the head of the table, Luffy was already inhaling food at his usual impossible pace, occasionally attempting to steal from his crewmates' plates only to have his fingers stabbed by Sanji's fork. Keep your rubber hands to yourself, shitty captain. The ladies get to eat their fill first. Robin watched the familiar chaos with amusement. After the day's battle, returning to these comfortable rhythms felt like truly coming home. She caught Nami looking at her knowingly and quickly focused on her own plate. So what do we do about these Ouroboros guys? Frankie asked between bites. They seemed pretty super determined to get Robin. We beat them up if they come back, Luffy said through a mouthful of meat. Simple. Nothing's ever that simple with you, Luffy, Nami sighed. We need to understand what they're after. Robin, that cube he showed you, have you ever heard of anything like it? Robin considered the question. There are mentions in some texts of smaller artifacts related to the poneglyphs, keys or guides to finding them. But most scholars considered those to be myths or misinterpretations. So it could be valuable, Zoro observed. Or it could be nothing. Either way, they believe it's important, Robin replied. And they were willing to attack us for it. That suggests they have strong motivation. I'm more concerned about that technology they used, Frankie interjected. Some kind of broadcast sea prism effect. That's not something I've heard of before, and I know my tech. It was most effective against devil fruit users, Chopper added, looking worried. If they come back with something stronger, we'll deal with it, Luffy stated firmly, reaching for another piece of meat. Robin's not going anywhere. The simple declaration warmed her more than it should have. For most of her life, Robin had been something people wanted to use or eliminate. Never something someone wanted to keep. After dinner, while the others continued celebrating their new ship, Robin slipped away to the library, a real library, not just a corner of the common room like on Mary. Frankie had designed it specifically with her in mind, with comfortable chairs, excellent lighting, and extensive shelving for her growing collection of books. She ran her fingers along the empty shelves, imagining how they would look filled with knowledge. This space represented a future she'd never dared hope for, a stable place where she could pursue her passion without constantly looking over her shoulder. Pretty cool, huh? She turned to find Luffy in the doorway, grinning as he surveyed the room. Frankie said you needed a place for all your books, he continued, entering the library and spinning around with his arms outstretched. I told him to make it extra big because you're the smartest person I know, so you probably need lots of space for smart stuff. Robin laughed softly. That was thoughtful of you, Captain. Do you like it? He asked, and she was surprised to hear a hint of uncertainty in his voice. Luffy rarely seemed to care what others thought of his decisions. I love it, she assured him. It's perfect. He beamed at her approval. Good. Because you're gonna be with us for a long time, so you need a good place for your books. The casual confidence of his statement, that she would be with them for a long time, made her chest tighten with emotion. After a lifetime of temporary arrangements and hasty departures, the idea of permanence was still foreign to her. Luffy. She began, then paused, unsure how to express what she was feeling. About today, with Lysander and the Ouroboros Society. What about them? He asked, plopping down in one of the reading chairs and spinning it childishly. They won't be the last to come after me, she said carefully. My knowledge makes me a target. The world government, other pirates, organizations like Ouroboros, being associated with me puts you all in danger. Luffy stopped spinning the chair, his expression unusually serious. So I need to know that you understand the risk. That you're prepared for what it means to keep me in your crew. He stood up, crossing the small space until he stood directly in front of her. Despite being shorter, there was something imposing about him in that moment, something that reminded her that this carefree boy was also the captain who had declared war on the world government without hesitation. Robin, he said, looking directly into her eyes, everyone on this ship has enemies. Zoro's got bounty hunters after him. The Marines want Sanji because of his family. Chopper's got those science guys who think he's a monster. The world government hates my guts because of my dad and grandpa. He shrugged as if this was the most obvious thing in the world. That's what it means to be pirates. We're not the kind of crew that runs away from fights. Especially not fights that matter. And I matter. The question slipped out before she could stop it, more vulnerable than she'd intended. Luffy looked genuinely confused. Of course you matter. You're my nakama. There was that word again. Nakama. It encompassed so much, and yet Robin was beginning to wonder if it was enough to describe what she felt when Luffy looked at her like this, as if her presence in his life was as natural and necessary as the sea beneath their ship. Before she could respond, a thunderous boom shook the ship, followed by Usopp's panicked voice from the deck. "We're under attack. Everyone topside now." The Thousand Sunny rocked violently as Robin and Luffy raced to the deck. The night sky was lit by the glow of fires, not on their ship, thankfully, but on the water around them. Flaming projectiles arced overhead, splashing into the sea with angry hisses. "What the hell?" Luffy demanded as they joined the others at the railing. "It's them again," Nami answered grimly, pointing to where the Eternal Serpent had reappeared, now accompanied by 2 additional vessels. "They made repairs faster than we expected. And brought friends," Zoro added, already tying his bandana around his head, his ritual before serious battles. Robin narrowed her eyes, studying the approaching ships. "The new vessels are different, they don't look like pirate ships. More like, research vessels." "That fits with what Lysander said about being a scholar," Sanji observed, lighting a fresh cigarette. "Though he's got a funny way of conducting research." "Nico Robin." Lysander's voice carried across the water, amplified by some kind of device. "I offer one final opportunity to cooperate. Come with us peacefully, and your friends will be spared." "He really doesn't learn, does he?" Frankie muttered, cracking his knuckles. Luffy stepped forward, drawing breath to shout back, but Robin placed a hand on his arm. "Let me," she said quietly. He looked at her for a moment, then nodded. Robin moved to the railing, standing tall as she called back, "I declined your offer before, and my answer hasn't changed. If you want me, you'll have to go through my crew. And that's not gonna happen." Luffy added, jumping up beside her. There was a pause, and then Lysander's voice again, this time with a cold edge to it. "As you wish. Remember that I tried to be reasonable." The ships began to move, spreading out to surround the Sunny. From their decks, strange devices were being wheeled into position, not cannons, but something that looked like satellite dishes or antennae. "I don't like the look of those," Frankie said nervously. "Could be the same tech they used earlier to weaken you devil fruit users." "Nami, can you get us out of here?" Robin asked. The navigator shook her head, checking her log pose. "Not quickly. The wind's against us, and they've positioned themselves to cut off our escape routes." "Then we fight," Luffy declared, cracking his knuckles. "Frankie, get the giant cannon ready. Usopp, take out those weird dish things before they can use them." The crew sprang into action, preparing for battle with practiced efficiency despite having their new ship for less than a day. Robin took position near the main mast, where her powers would be most effective for defense. The first attack came not from cannons but from the strange devices on the enemy ships. They began to emit a pulsing blue light, and immediately Robin felt that same weakening sensation from earlier, though milder at this distance. "They're trying to suppress our powers again," Chopper cried, staggering slightly. "Usopp!" Luffy shouted. "On it," the sniper called back from the crow's nest. "Special attack, Firebird Star." The flaming projectile streaked toward the nearest device, but before it could hit, something intercepted it midair, a dark blur that moved too fast to track. A figure landed on the Sunny's deck with impossible grace, a woman in the same black coat as Lysander, but with a hood that shadowed her face. In her hand, she held Usopp's neutralized ammunition. "Devil fruit user," Zoro warned, unsheathing his swords. The woman tossed aside Usopp's projectile and pushed back her hood, revealing striking features and hair so red it almost glowed in the moonlight. "Perceptive," she said with a cold smile. "The Kaze no Mi grants me control over air currents. Your long-nosed friend won't be hitting anything unless I allow it." "Who the hell are you people?" Sanji demanded, though Robin noticed he was holding back from attacking the female intruder. "The Ouroboros Society exists to uncover the truth of the Void Century," the woman replied. "Unlike the world government, we believe knowledge should be free. All knowledge." Her gaze fixed on Robin. "Even dangerous knowledge." If you believe in free knowledge, why try to kidnap Robin? Luffy challenged, moving protectively in front of Robin. The woman's smile widened. Because some knowledge requires proper context. Miss Nico's abilities are valuable, but her interpretation might be flawed without our guidance. In other words, you want to control how I read the poneglyphs, Robin translated coldly. You're no better than the government. We are nothing like those tyrants, the woman snapped, her composure cracking slightly. They destroy knowledge. We preserve it. They kill scholars. We attack ships and try to kidnap people. Nami interrupted sarcastically. Before the woman could respond, more figures began landing on the deck, Ouroboros members using some kind of tech to launch themselves from their ships. The Straw Hats formed a defensive circle, with Robin in the center. Take the woman alive, the red-haired devil fruit user ordered. Deal with the others as necessary. The battle erupted across the Sunny's deck. Despite the weakening effect from the devices, which grew stronger as the enemy ships drew closer, the Straw Hats fought ferociously. Zoro's blades flashed in the moonlight as he cut down attackers. Sanji's flaming kick sent others flying overboard. Frankie and Chopper fought back-to-back, while Nami created storm clouds to electrocute clusters of enemies. Robin did her best to support them all, using her powers to disarm attackers and protect her crewmates from sneak attacks. But she could feel her strength ebbing as the suppression field intensified. Luffy was facing off against the red-haired woman, his rubber attacks disrupted by her air manipulation. Every time he threw a punch, she diverted it with a gesture, bending the air currents to her will. You're outmatched, Straw Hat, she taunted as she sent him skidding backward with a concentrated blast of air. Luffy grinned despite the situation. I don't care if you control air. I'm still gonna kick your ass and protect Robin. He launched himself forward again, this time spinning rapidly. Gomu Gomu no storm. The multiple rapid punches were too many for her to deflect at once. Several connected, sending her crashing into the mast. But she recovered quickly, blood trickling from her lip as she glared at Luffy. Enough games, she snarled. Arrow vacuum. The air around Luffy's head suddenly vanished, creating a pocket of vacuum. His eyes bulged as he clutched at his throat, unable to breathe. Luffy! Robin cried, desperately trying to reach him. She crossed her arms. Cien Fleur, wing. Arms sprouted from the red-haired woman's back, forming into wing-like appendages that disrupted her concentration as they forced her arms wide. The vacuum around Luffy dissipated, and he collapsed to his knees, gasping. Robin rushed to his side, supporting him as he wheezed. Are you alright? Yeah, he managed between breaths. Thanks, Robin. Around them, the battle was turning against the Straw Hats. The suppression field was growing stronger, and more Ouroboros members were boarding from all three ships. Despite their valiant fighting, they were being overwhelmed by sheer numbers. Robin, Luffy said, his voice stronger now as he stood, you need to hide. Get below deck. We'll handle this. She shook her head firmly. No. I won't run while you all fight for me. Not again. It's not about running, he argued. It's about, look out. Robin shoved Luffy aside as Lysander himself appeared, his sea prism blade slashing through the space where Luffy had just been standing. Miss Nico, the silver-haired man greeted with cold politeness. I admire your loyalty to these pirates, misplaced though it is. But surely you must see that your situation is hopeless. He gestured around the deck, where the other Straw Hats were being pushed back, fighting desperately against overwhelming odds. Surrender now, he continued, and I give you my word they will not be harmed further. Continue to resist, and I cannot guarantee their survival. Robin looked around at her crewmates, her friends, her family. They were all fighting so hard, but the suppression field was taking its toll, and the enemy's numbers seemed endless. Don't listen to him, Robin. Luffy shouted, struggling back to his feet. We're not beaten yet. But even as he said it, Zoro went down under a pile of attackers, his movements sluggish from the weakening field. Sanji was bleeding from a head wound, barely fending off 3 opponents at once. Chopper had been forced back into his smallest form, unable to transform in the suppression field. Robin felt tears threatening to form in her eyes. Once again, her existence was bringing pain to those she loved. Once again, her knowledge and abilities were causing others to suffer. "If I go with you," she said quietly to Lysander, "you'll leave them alone." "All of them?" "Robin, no." Luffy grabbed her arm, his eyes wide with alarm. "Don't do this." Lysander smiled coldly. "You have my word, Miss Nico. My quarrel is not with the Straw Hats. It's with those who would keep knowledge imprisoned." "You're lying," Luffy accused. "You'll hurt them anyway." "Not if they stand down," Lysander replied smoothly. "I have no desire for unnecessary bloodshed." Robin looked from Lysander to Luffy, her mind racing. She believed Luffy was right, Lysander couldn't be trusted. But the alternative was watching her crew be defeated, possibly killed, before her eyes. "Again. She began, but before she could finish, a tremendous explosion rocked one of the Ouroboros ships. Everyone froze, turning toward the source of the blast. Through the smoke, Robin could make out another ship approaching, a marine vessel. "Marines!" Usopp shouted from the crow's nest. "A battleship, coming in fast." The effect on the battle was immediate. The Ouroboros members hesitated, looking to Lysander for direction. The silver-haired man's face contorted with fury. "Who ordered marine involvement?" he demanded, seemingly to himself. This operation was supposed to be discreet. The red-haired woman appeared at his side. "Sir, we need to withdraw. If the Marines identify us." Lysander looked at Robin with naked frustration. "This isn't over, Miss Nico. The truth cannot remain hidden forever." With a gesture to his subordinates, the Ouroboros members began retreating to their ships, using the same launching devices that had brought them aboard. The suppression field weakened as they withdrew, allowing the Straw Hats to begin recovering their strength. Luffy immediately moved to Robin's side, supporting her as her own strength returned. "Are you okay?" "Yes," she assured him, though she felt shaky from the prolonged exposure to the field. "But we need to leave. If the Marines are here." "Already on it." Nami called, taking the helm. "Frankie, we need coup to burst." "Super idea," the cyborg agreed, rushing to the engine room. "Everyone hold on to something." The Sunny's unique propulsion system engaged with a roar, sending the ship flying through the air just as the marine vessel came into range. They soared over the heads of both the Marines and the retreating Ouroboros ships, putting significant distance between themselves and the conflict. When they splashed down again, they were far from both threats, the night sea calm around them. For a moment, no one spoke, all of them processing the near disaster they'd just escaped. Then Luffy turned to Robin, his expression unusually stern. "Don't ever try to sacrifice yourself for us again." She blinked, surprised by his tone. "Luffy, they were going to kill you all." "I couldn't, we're Nakama," he interrupted firmly. "That means we fight together or not at all. I already told you at Enies lobby, your life belongs to us now. To the crew. To me." The possessiveness in his voice should have alarmed her after a lifetime of being controlled by others. Instead, it sent a strange thrill through her. Because this wasn't about control or exploitation. This was about belonging. "My life belongs to me," she corrected gently. "But I choose to share it with all of you. With you, Luffy." Something shifted in his expression then, a subtle change that might have been imperceptible to someone who didn't know him as well as she was beginning to. His eyes widened slightly, and for once, the perpetually confident Monkey D. Luffy seemed at a loss for words. The moment was broken by Chopper rushing over to check their injuries, followed by the rest of the crew gathering around to assess the damage to their new ship and themselves. But later, as they all worked to repair what they could before seeking a proper port for more extensive fixes, Robin caught Luffy watching her with that same thoughtful expression. When their eyes met, he didn't look away or break into his usual carefree grin. Instead, he held her gaze steadily, something unspoken passing between them, something new and fragile and full of possibility. And Robin, who had spent her life running from connections, found herself walking toward this one instead. Dawn broke over the Thousand Sunny as it drifted on calm seas. The crew had worked through the night to patch the worst of the damage from the battle, and now most of them were catching what sleep they could before the day's journey continued. Robin sat in the library, unable to rest despite her exhaustion. Her mind kept replaying the events of the previous day, the attack, the threat to her crew, and most of all, Luffy's words. "Your life belongs to us now. To the crew. To me." She traced her fingers over the cover of the book in her lap, a text on ancient civilizations that she'd salvaged from Water 7 before they departed. The knowledge contained within was precious to her, but not nearly as precious as what she'd found aboard this ship, a family who would fight for her, die for her if necessary. A captain who saw her value beyond her abilities. The door creaked open, and Robin looked up to find Luffy standing there, looking uncharacteristically hesitant. "Can't sleep either?" she asked softly. He shook his head, entering the room and dropping into the chair opposite her. "Too much thinking." That surprised a laugh from her. "You? Thinking too much? I thought that was my affliction, not yours." He grinned, but it didn't quite reach his eyes. "Yeah, well, almost losing you again makes a guy think." The simple admission sent warmth spreading through her chest. "You didn't lose me. Thanks to you and the others. But we almost did. Again." He leaned forward, elbows on his knees, looking more serious than she was used to seeing him. "Robin, who were those guys? Really?" She sighed, closing her book. "I don't know much about the Ouroboros Society specifically. But there have always been organizations obsessed with the Void Century, some seeking the knowledge for power, others believing it contains some ultimate truth about the world. Like the Rio Poneglyph you're looking for." Robin nodded, impressed that he remembered that detail from their conversations. "Yes. The Rio Poneglyph supposedly contains the true history of the world. But scattered throughout the Grand Line are other poneglyphs containing pieces of that history. And these Ouroboros guys think you can help them find it all." "Precisely. As perhaps the only person alive who can read the ancient language, I'm valuable." She said the last word with a hint of bitterness. Luffy studied her face. "But that's not all you are." She blinked, caught off guard by the perceptiveness of his statement. "No," she agreed softly. "Though for most of my life, that's all anyone saw." "Well, they're stupid," he declared with his usual blunt certainty. "You're Robin. You like coffee and books and making those little flower things with your devil fruit powers when you think nobody's watching. You're super smart but also kind. You laugh at my jokes even when they're not that funny. You're brave and strong and pretty and," he stopped abruptly, a faint blush coloring his cheeks as he seemed to realize what he was saying. Robin felt her own face warming. "You think I'm pretty?" Luffy rubbed the back of his neck, suddenly finding the bookshelf incredibly interesting. "Well, yeah. Everyone thinks that. It's not a big deal." But the way he couldn't quite meet her eyes suggested otherwise. Robin found herself smiling, a genuine smile that reached her eyes and lightened her heart. The great monkey D, Luffy, fearless in battle but flustered by a simple compliment. "Thank you," she said softly. "And thank you for seeing more in me than my abilities." He finally looked at her directly again. "That's what Nakama do. They see each other. Really see." There was that word again. Nakama. But this time, Robin wondered if there might be something more behind it, at least for her. The way her heart raced when Luffy looked at her this way, with such openness and warmth, suggested feelings beyond simple friendship or crew loyalty. Before she could respond, Nami's voice called from outside, "Everyone on deck. We've got a situation." Luffy jumped up immediately, his serious demeanor returning. "Now what?" They rushed to the deck to find the rest of the crew already gathered at the railings, staring out at the sea. Robin followed their gaze and felt her breath catch. Ships. Dozens of them, surrounding the Sunny in a wide circle. Not marine vessels or pirate ships, but smaller craft with distinctive blue sails. Fishmen, Sanji identified them, his cigarette dangling forgotten from his lips. Not just any fishmen, Jinbe's voice came from behind them as the former warlord emerged from below deck, where he'd been resting after his own injuries from their previous adventures. "Those are ships from Fishman Island. Are they friendly?" Chopper asked nervously. Jinbe frowned, studying the vessels through narrowed eyes. "They should be. I know many of the captains of Fishman Island's fleet." As if on cue, one of the ships detached from the formation, approaching the Sunny directly. On its deck stood a tall, dignified fishman with deep blue skin and elaborate tattoos covering his muscular torso. Ruboshi, Jinbe identified him. A prince of Fishman Island and son of Neptune himself. The fishman prince raised a conch shell to his lips, his voice amplified as he called out, "Straw Hat Luffy. We come seeking audience with you and your crew." Luffy stepped forward, cupping his hands around his mouth to shout back, "What do you want?" "We bring news from the depths. And a warning." Ruboshi replied. "Permission to come aboard?" Luffy looked to Jinbe, who nodded reassuringly. "I know him. He can be trusted." "Okay, come aboard." Luffy called back. "But just you and a couple others." The fishman vessel drew alongside the Sunny, and Ruboshi leaped gracefully onto their deck, accompanied by two guards who remained respectfully back as the prince approached Luffy and Jinbe. "Brother Jinbe," Ruboshi greeted with a formal bow. "It is good to see you well." "And you, my prince," Jinbe replied with equal formality. "Though I am surprised to find you so far from Fishman Island." "Extraordinary times call for extraordinary measures," Ruboshi said grimly. He turned to Luffy. "Straw Hat, my father sends his regards and his thanks for your past service to our kingdom." Luffy grinned. "No problem. How's everyone doing down there?" "That is why we have come," the prince replied, his expression darkening. "Fishman Island faces a new threat, one that involves your archaeologist." He nodded toward Robin, who felt a chill run through her. "Robin?" Luffy's smile vanished. "What's she got to do with Fishman Island?" Ruboshi reached into a pouch at his waist, withdrawing a small object that Robin immediately recognized despite never having seen it before, a cube identical to the one Lysander had shown her. 3 days ago, a group calling themselves the Ouroboros Society infiltrated our kingdom, Ruboshi explained. "They stole this from our royal treasury and killed 7 guards in the process. We pursued them to the surface, only to learn that they had also targeted you." Robin stepped forward, her curiosity overcoming her caution. "May I?" she asked, holding out her hand. Ruboshi hesitated, then placed the cube in her palm. It was heavier than it looked, made of some material she couldn't identify, not stone, not metal, but something that seemed to pulse faintly with its own inner light. "Our scholars believe it to be connected to the poneglyph in our temple," Ruboshi continued. "The one pointing to the ancient weapon Poseidon." Robin examined the cube carefully, turning it in her hands. The surface was covered in the same script as the poneglyphs, but smaller, more densely packed. "It's a key," she murmured, her academic fascination momentarily overshadowing the danger. "Not just to finding poneglyphs, but to unlocking additional information within them. The inscriptions visible on the poneglyphs themselves may only be part of the message." "Exactly," Ruboshi confirmed. "Our scholars theorized as much, though none could read the text to confirm it. But the Ouroboros Society seems to know their purpose very well. And they want Robin to read them," Luffy concluded, his expression hard. "That's why they attacked us." Yes. And they will not stop, Ruboshi warned. Their leader is a man known among the underworld as the Collector, a former world government scientist obsessed with ancient technologies. The cubes are said to be keys to weapons capable of reshaping the world itself. Robin frowned, studying the inscriptions more closely. This doesn't mention weapons. It speaks of awakening. Something sleeping beneath the waves. She looked up at Ruboshi sharply. Has anything unusual been happening around Fishman Island? Earthquakes, changes in sea currents, strange behavior from sea kings. The prince's eyes widened. All of those things. How did you know? Because whatever this key unlocks, it's already beginning to stir, Robin replied grimly. And the Ouroboros Society is accelerating the process by gathering the keys. Luffy cracked his knuckles. So we stopped them. Easy. Not easy, Jinbe cautioned. If they've infiltrated Fishman Island's defenses, they are formidable indeed. And they are not working alone, Ruboshi added. We have intelligence suggesting they've allied with elements within the world government itself, rogue scientists and officials who believe the ancient weapons should be controlled rather than destroyed. Robin handed the cube back to Ruboshi. Why show us this? What do you want from us? The Fishman prince straightened, his bearing regal despite his obvious fatigue. My father requests your help, Straw Hat Pirates. Not just to protect Fishman Island, but to prevent the Ouroboros Society from acquiring all the keys. If they succeed, they could awaken forces that have slept since the Void Century, forces that could destroy the delicate balance of our world. And in return? Nami asked pragmatically. What does Fishman Island offer us? Ruboshi smiled slightly. Besides our eternal friendship. Information. We believe we know the location of another key, one that the Ouroboros Society has not yet found. It lies on an island not far from here, hidden in ruins that date back to the time before the world government. Robin felt her pulse quicken with academic excitement. Ruins from the Void Century were incredibly rare, most having been destroyed by the world government to hide the truth of that lost time. Luffy looked at his crew, his gaze lingering on Robin. What do you think? It could be a trap, Zoro pointed out practically. Or it could be the adventure of a lifetime, Usopp countered, surprising everyone with his enthusiasm despite his usual caution. It would put Robin in the Ouroboros Society's crosshairs even more directly, Sanji observed, looking concerned. I'm already in their crosshairs, Robin replied calmly. At least this way, we might learn more about what they're planning, and perhaps discover truths about the Void Century in the process. Luffy nodded, seeming to weigh all their input. Then he turned to Ruboshi with that determined expression that Robin had come to admire so deeply. We'll help, he declared. Not because some fish king asks us to, but because they're after my nakama. And nobody threatens my nakama and gets away with it. Ruboshi bowed deeply. Fishman Island is in your debt once more, Straw Hat Luffy. Yeah, Luffy waved dismissively. Just tell us where this island is so we can get going. As Ruboshi conferred with Nami about the island's coordinates, Robin found herself watching Luffy. There was something different about him today, a new intensity in the way he carried himself, in the way his eyes kept finding hers across the deck. As if he, too, felt the shift that had occurred between them. When the Fishman delegation departed, leaving the Sunny to prepare for its new course, Robin approached Luffy at the figurehead, his special spot where he often sat to think. This mission will be dangerous, she said quietly. Perhaps more for me than anyone else. He patted the space beside him, inviting her to join him on the lion's mane. It was an honor he rarely extended to anyone else, and Robin felt oddly touched as she carefully took a seat beside him, their legs dangling over the carved wood. Everything we do is dangerous, he replied with a shrug. That's what makes it fun. Luffy, she said seriously, these people want me specifically. If something happens, nothing's gonna happen to you, he interrupted firmly. Not while I'm around. The simple conviction in his voice made her smile despite her concerns. You can't always protect everyone, you know. Watch me, he challenged, grinning at her. But then his expression softened into something more vulnerable. Robin, when I thought I might lose you at Enies' lobby, it felt worse than when Ace died. Robin's breath caught. Ace had been Luffy's beloved brother, his death a traumatic loss that had nearly broken their captain. For Luffy to even compare the thought of losing her to that pain. That's why I got so mad when you tried to sacrifice yourself to those Ouroboros guys, he continued, looking out at the horizon now rather than at her. I can't go through that again. I won't. Tentatively, Robin placed her hand over his where it rested on the figurehead. I understand, she said softly. And I promise I won't try to leave again. We'll face whatever comes together. He turned his hand over to clasp hers, his smaller fingers interlacing with her longer ones. They sat there in comfortable silence, watching the sun rise higher over the endless blue sea, their hands joined as the thousand sunny carried them toward new dangers and discoveries. And if Robin's heart beat a little faster at the simple contact, if Luffy held her hand a little tighter than strictly necessary, well, neither of them mentioned it. Some things didn't need words. Not yet. Chapter 2, Navigation. The thousand sunny cut through the waves with surprising grace for a ship its size. 3 days had passed since their meeting with Prince Roboshi, and the Straw Hats were approaching the archipelago where the mysterious island supposedly lay hidden. Robin stood at the railing, watching the horizon where a cluster of jagged islands had begun to appear, their silhouettes dark against the morning sky. They don't look very friendly, Nami remarked, joining Robin with her navigation charts in hand. Few worthwhile destinations do, Robin replied with a small smile. She'd spent most of the journey researching what little information they had about the region, an area known as the Fractured Isles, a labyrinth of small, treacherous islands surrounded by unpredictable currents and magnetic anomalies. According to the Fishman's maps, we need to pass through that central channel. Nami pointed toward a narrow passage between two of the larger islands. But I don't like it. The currents converge there in a way that doesn't make natural sense. Robin nodded thoughtfully. In my research, I found mentions of the ancients altering the seabed in certain locations, creating artificial channels and current patterns as a form of defense or navigation aid. You mean they might have built this archipelago? Nami asked incredulously. Not built, but perhaps modified. Robin's eyes gleamed with scholarly excitement. The civilization of the Void Century possessed technologies we can scarcely comprehend. Some texts suggest they could manipulate the very land itself. Their conversation was interrupted by Luffy's arrival. He bounded up to them with his usual boundless energy, though Robin noticed something different in the way he looked at her, a new awareness that made her heart skip slightly. Are those the Mystery Islands? He asked, peering eagerly at the approaching landmasses. They look cool. Think they have any good meat? Nami rolled her eyes. We're not going there for a barbecue, Luffy. We're looking for an ancient artifact that might help save the world, remember? Yeah, but we can still eat, right? He grinned at Robin, as if expecting her to back him up. I suppose we'll need to maintain our strength, she conceded, unable to resist smiling back at him. Something in her tone must have given her away, because Nami glanced between them with raised eyebrows before clearing her throat. Well, I'll go plot our final approach. Robin, maybe you can keep our captain from diving overboard in excitement before we actually reach the islands. As Nami walked away, Robin became acutely aware that she was alone with Luffy for the first time since their moment on the figurehead. He seemed to realize it too, his usual boundless energy briefly tempered as he leaned against the railing beside her, their shoulders almost touching. You excited about the ruins? He asked. You always get this look when we're about to find old stuff. Your eyes get all sparkly. Do they? Robin laughed softly, surprised by his observation. I suppose I am excited. The chance to study ruins from the Void Century is rare. Luffy nodded sagely, as if he completely understood the academic significance. though Robin knew his interest in history extended only as far as cool stories about warriors and pirates. "You'll find your Rio thingy someday," he said confidently. "The big stone that tells all the secrets." "Rio Poneglyph," she corrected gently. "And yes, I hope so. Though I've begun to wonder if perhaps the journey to find it is as important as the destination." He looked at her curiously. "What do you mean?" Robin hesitated, surprised by her own willingness to share such personal thoughts. "Before I joined this crew, my only purpose was survival and finding the Rio Poneglyph. But now..." She gestured at the ship around them, at the friends who had become family. "Now I've found something I never expected." "A home," Luffy said simply. The word resonated within her. Yes. A home. Their eyes met, and Robin felt that same strange connection that had been growing between them, a warmth and understanding that transcended their usual captain-crewmate dynamic. Luffy opened his mouth as if to say something more, but was interrupted by Usopp's shout from the crow's nest. "Ships approaching. 3, no, 4 marine vessels coming in from the northeast." The moment shattered as they both sprang into action, Luffy immediately climbing to the upper deck for a better view while Robin created a chain of eyes along the ship's mast to confirm Usopp's sighting. "He's right," she called to the others as they rushed to their battle stations. "For marine battleships, and they're moving to cut us off from the archipelago." "They must know where we're headed," Jinbe observed grimly, taking the helm from Nami. "Perhaps the world government is aware of the artifact as well. Or they're working with the Ouroboros Society," Frankie suggested, preparing the ship's defense systems. "Either way, we're in for a super fight." Luffy cracked his knuckles, grinning with anticipation. "Let them come. We'll bust right through them." But as the marine vessels drew closer, Robin felt an unusual sense of foreboding. Using her devil fruit powers, she created an eye on the lead ship's deck, focusing on the tall figure standing at its prow. "Luffy," she called, her voice tight with sudden tension. "It's Vice Admiral Garp." The smile vanished from Luffy's face. "Grandpa? What's he doing here?" Monkey D. Garp stood on the deck of his battleship, arms crossed over his massive chest as he glared at the pirate vessel ahead. Despite his advancing years, the marine hero looked as imposing as ever, his white hair and beard doing nothing to diminish his aura of barely contained power. "Sir," a young officer approached him cautiously. "We're within cannon range. Shall we open fire?" Garp snorted. "On my grandson?" "Not yet. Signal the Thousand Sunny. I want to talk to the brat first." Minutes later, Garp's booming voice carried across the water through a den mushy amplification system. "Straw Hat Luffy. This is Vice Admiral JRP. Heave to and prepare to be boarded." On the Sunny's deck, the Straw Hats gathered tensely as Luffy stepped forward to respond through their own communication system. "What do you want, Grandpa?" "We're kind of busy." "Busy getting yourselves killed, from what I hear." Garp bellowed back. "Do you have any idea what you're sailing into, you foolish boy?" Luffy glanced at Robin, who shook her head slightly. They hadn't shared the details of their mission with anyone outside the crew. "Just exploring some cool islands." Luffy shouted back, his terrible lying abilities painfully obvious even across the expanse of ocean. "Nothing special." There was a pause, then Garp's disgusted voice, "You never could lie worth a damn. Listen up. The Fractured Isles are under marine quarantine by direct order of the 5 elders. Turn back now, or I'll be forced to stop you myself." Robin stepped closer to Luffy. "He knows," she murmured. "The world government must be aware of what's hidden there." Luffy nodded grimly, then raised the speaker again. "Not gonna happen, Grandpa. This is important. More important than your lives." Garp challenged. "Because that's what you're risking, boy. And not just from me." A tense silence fell over the Sunny's deck as the crew looked to their captain. They all knew what Garp was capable of, one of the strongest marines alive, a man who had cornered Gold Roger himself multiple times. Even Luffy had never defeated his grandfather in a direct confrontation. "What's the call, Luffy?" Zoro asked quietly, his hand on his swords. "Fight or run?" Luffy's eyes met Robin's, a silent question in them. This mission was for her, after all, her expertise, her quest. She knew what he was really asking: is this worth it? "We need what's on that island," she said with quiet certainty. "If the world government is this determined to keep us away, it only confirms its importance." Luffy nodded once, decision made. He turned back to the speaker. "Sorry, Grandpa. We're going through, with or without your permission." Garp's sigh was audible even across the distance. "I figured you'd say that. You always were a stubborn brat." There was a pause, then, "Very well. As a Vice Admiral of the Marines, I have no choice but to stop you by force. Everyone to stations." Jinbe called, taking the helm. "Prepare for battle." "Wait." Robin called out suddenly, her eyes widening as she noticed something through her devil fruit surveillance. "He's alone at the front of his ship." "What's he doing?" Nami asked anxiously. Robin watched through her created eye as Garp rolled up his sleeves and began a series of stretching exercises. "I believe he's preparing to throw something." "Oh crap," Luffy groaned. "Everyone hang on to something. Grandpa's gonna throw cannonballs." "What?" Usopp squeaked in disbelief. "With his bare hands?" But Luffy was already scrambling to secure himself to the mast, genuine alarm on his face. The rest of the crew, seeing their captain's reaction, rushed to find handholds just as Garp reached down out of Robin's viewpoint. When he straightened again, the Vice Admiral was indeed holding a massive cannonball in each hand as casually as if they were baseballs. "He can't possibly," Nami began, but her words were cut off as Garp wound up and hurled the first projectile with terrifying force. The cannonball streaked toward them like a meteor, far faster than any ship's cannon could launch it. Frankie barely had time to activate the Sunny's Jaian cannon in defense, the energy blast meeting the cannonball midair in a thunderous explosion that rocked the ship. "Frankie! Coup de burst!" Luffy yelled. "Now! On it!" The cyborg shipwright raced to the engine room while the rest of the crew braced themselves. "But Luffy, we'll be blasting away from the islands," Nami protested. "Better than getting smashed by Grandpa." Luffy countered as another cannonball came hurtling toward them. This one Luffy managed to intercept himself, stretching out to catch it but getting pushed back by the sheer force, his rubber body absorbing the impact as he crashed into the mast. "Everyone secure." Frankie's voice boomed from below. Coup de burst. The Sunny's signature escape technique activated with a tremendous roar, jets of compressed air shooting from the stern and launching the ship into the sky just as two more cannonballs whistled through the space they had occupied seconds before. As they soared over the marine blockade, Robin caught a glimpse of Garp watching them fly overhead. To her surprise, the old man seemed to be smiling, a proud, knowing smile that didn't match his supposed anger. "He let us go," she realized aloud as they began their descent. "Huh?" Chopper looked at her in confusion. "But he was attacking us." "Not with everything he has," Robin explained. "Garp could have brought 10 battleships, or called Admiral support. Instead, he came with minimal force and positioned his ships in a way that left a gap we could exploit." Luffy, brushing himself off after his collision with the mast, grinned. "Yep, that sounds like Grandpa. He's gotta do his marine duty, but he doesn't always try his hardest to stop me." "Well, that's lucky for us," Nami said, rushing to check their trajectory as the Sunny began its descent. "But we've got a new problem. The coup de burst is sending us straight into the archipelago, and we're coming in too fast." All eyes turned toward the rapidly approaching islands. Instead of the gentle approach they'd planned, they were now hurtling toward the maze of rocky outcroppings and treacherous channels at dangerous speed. "Jinbe!" Luffy shouted. "Can you control our landing?" The fishman helmsman gripped the wheel tightly, his powerful arms straining. "I'll try, but brace for impact. This won't be gentle." Robin created a network of arms along the railings, forming a safety net for any crew members who might be thrown overboard. Beside her, Luffy stretched his arms to wrap around as many of his friends as he could reach, anchoring himself to the mast with his legs. The Thousand Sunny crashed back into the sea with bone-jarring force, sending massive sprays of water over the deck as Jinbe fought to maintain control. They were in the outer channels of the archipelago now, the swift currents immediately catching the ship and pulling it deeper into the maze of islands. "Reef to starboard!" Nami yelled, rushing to help Jinbe navigate. "Hard to port." The Sunny responded admirably to Jinbe's skilled handling, but the currents were unlike anything they'd encountered before, swirling, contradictory flows that seemed to defy the natural laws of hydrodynamics. One moment they were being pushed forward, the next pulled sideways toward jagged rocks. "These aren't natural currents," Jinbe confirmed Robin's earlier theory, sweat beading on his brow as he wrestled with the wheel. "They've been engineered somehow. Can you use fishman karate to control them?" Sanji asked, helping Frankie secure loose equipment that had been knocked around during their landing. Jinbe shook his head grimly. "Not currents this complex. It would be like trying to redirect 100 rivers at once." The sky darkened above them with unnatural speed, heavy clouds gathering as if summoned by the islands themselves. Within minutes, rain began to pelt down, reducing visibility and making the already treacherous navigation even more dangerous. "We need to find shelter," Nami shouted over the rising wind. "There's a cove on the largest island, 2 kilometers southeast. I can't see it in this rain." Jinbe called back, straining to peer through the downpour. Robin concentrated, sprouting eyes on multiple islands to search for the cove Nami had spotted on the charts. "There," she pointed finally. "Behind that rock formation shaped like a serpent's head." Jinbe adjusted course, fighting the currents that seemed determined to dash them against the rocks. The Sunny groaned under the strain, its atom would frame the only reason they hadn't been torn apart already. A massive wave suddenly rose beside them, towering over the ship like a liquid mountain. Before anyone could react, it crashed down upon the Sunny's deck with tremendous force, sweeping across the ship from port to starboard. Robin felt herself lifted off her feet, the safety net of arms she'd created torn away by the sheer power of the water. As she was carried toward the railing, a rubber arm stretched out, wrapping around her waist. "Got you!" Luffy shouted, pulling her back. But as he reeled her in, another wave struck from the opposite side. This one caught Luffy unprepared, his feet losing their anchor as both he and Robin were swept over the starboard railing into the churning sea. Robin had just enough time to see the horrified faces of their crewmates before the dark waters closed over her head. Being a devil fruit user, she immediately felt her strength ebbing as the sea robbed her of her powers. Through the murky water, she could see Luffy nearby, similarly helpless. With her last conscious effort, Robin managed to swim toward him, wrapping an arm around his chest as the currents carried them away from the Sunny and into the heart of the archipelago. "Robin! Robin, wake up!" The voice seemed to come from very far away, pushing through layers of darkness and cold. Robin fought to open her eyes, her body feeling heavier than it should. "Come on, Robin. Don't do this to me." Luffy's voice. Panicked in a way she'd rarely heard before. That alone was enough to force her back to consciousness. Her eyes snapped open, and she immediately rolled to her side, coughing up seawater in painful spasms. A hand patted her back awkwardly as she cleared her lungs. "That's it. Get all the sea stuff out." When she could finally breathe again, Robin looked up to find Luffy kneeling beside her, soaking wet and covered in sand, his face etched with worry that transformed into relief as their eyes met. "You scared me," he said simply. "Thought I lost you for a minute there." Robin pushed herself to a sitting position, taking in their surroundings. They were on a small beach enclosed by steep cliffs, the angry sea still churning just meters away. Rain continued to fall, though less intensely than before. The sunny? She asked, her voice hoarse from the saltwater. Luffy shook his head. Don't know. Last I saw, they were still fighting the currents. Jinbe's the best helmsman in the world, though. They'll be okay. She nodded, trusting his confidence in their crew. How did we survive? The sea should have. I got lucky, Luffy admitted. The current pushed us into some kind of underwater tunnel. It had air pockets, so I could catch my breath. Then it spat us out here. He grimaced. I had to drag you the last part. You weren't breathing when we washed up. The implication hit her suddenly. You gave me rescue breathing. To her surprise, Luffy's cheeks reddened slightly. Chopper taught us all how. For emergencies. He looked away, suddenly fascinated by the pattern of the sand. Sorry if that was weird. You saved my life, Robin said softly. Thank you. An awkward silence fell between them, broken only by the sound of the waves and rain. Robin took the opportunity to assess their situation more thoroughly. The beach was small, perhaps 30 meters across, with no visible exit except for the sea. The cliffs surrounding them were sheer and smooth, as if carved deliberately to prevent scaling. We appear to be trapped, she observed, trying to keep her tone neutral despite the gravity of their situation. Two devil fruit users stranded by the sea. Luffy stood up, brushing sand from his shorts. Nah, there's gotta be a way out. This place was made by those ancient guys you're always talking about, right? They wouldn't build a trap with no purpose. Robin considered this, impressed by his insight. You're right. If this is indeed an artificial formation, there must be an intended entrance and exit. She struggled to her feet, still feeling weak from her near drowning. Luffy immediately moved to support her, his arm around her waist steadying her with surprising gentleness. Take it easy. You almost died. The casual concern in his voice, the protective way he held her, it sent a warmth through Robin that had nothing to do with physical recovery. She allowed herself to lean on him as they began examining the cliff walls more closely. Look for unusual patterns or symbols, she instructed. The people of the Void Century often hid their entrances with puzzles or tests. They circled the small beach carefully, Robin's strength gradually returning as they searched. The rain had dwindled to a light drizzle, improving visibility but leaving them both thoroughly chilled in their wet clothes. Hey, what's this? Luffy called, pointing to a section of the cliff face that looked slightly different from the rest, smoother, with faint lines etched into it. Robin hurried over, excitement overriding her lingering weakness. The markings were subtle, nearly eroded by centuries of exposure, but unmistakable to her trained eye. It's the ancient script, she confirmed, tracing the symbols with her fingertips. Similar to what's on the poneglyphs, but an older variant. Can you read it? Luffy asked, watching her with undisguised admiration. Partially. It's a warning, or perhaps a riddle. She frowned in concentration. The path forward lies in united palms. No, hands. The path forward lies in united hands. United hands. Like, holding hands. Luffy suggested, demonstrating by clasping his own hands together. Robin shook her head. I don't think it's that literal. Perhaps, she broke off as Luffy suddenly grabbed her hand, interlacing his fingers with hers. Like this? The unexpected contact made her heart skip, but before she could respond, the ground beneath them trembled slightly. They both looked down in surprise as a circular section of the cliff face where the inscription was located began to glow with a soft blue light. I think you're onto something, Robin said, staring at their joined hands in wonder. But why would it? Maybe it can tell we're Nakama, Luffy suggested with his usual simple logic. United, like a crew. Robin wasn't convinced that ancient technology could detect such abstract concepts, but she couldn't deny the evidence before her eyes. The glowing section of rock was now receding inward, revealing a dark passageway beyond. It worked. Luffy exclaimed, tugging her forward eagerly, their hands still clasped together. "Come on, let's explore." "Wait," Robin cautioned, holding him back. "We should be careful. If this place has been sealed for centuries, there might be traps or, traps just make it more fun," Luffy grinned, undeterred. Then, seeing her serious expression, he nodded reluctantly. "Okay, we'll be careful. You go first since you know about old stuff, and I'll protect you from behind." Robin couldn't help but smile at his childlike enthusiasm combined with genuine concern for her safety. It was so quintessentially Luffy, reckless yet responsible in his own unique way. She created several arms along the walls of the passageway, using them to feel ahead for tripwires or pressure plates while they advanced cautiously. The tunnel was surprisingly smooth and even, sloping gently upward away from the beach. As they moved deeper, Robin noticed something odd about the walls. "These aren't stone," she realized, running her fingers along the surface. "At least, not natural stone. They appear to be some kind of composite material." "Like Frankie's body?" Luffy asked, knocking on the wall experimentally. "In a way," Robin agreed. "It suggests a level of technological advancement far beyond what existed during the known historical record. This supports theories that the Void Century civilization was destroyed not because it was primitive, but because it was too advanced." Luffy looked at her blankly. "So they were super smart, and somebody didn't like that?" "Precisely," Robin smiled, appreciating his ability to cut to the heart of complex ideas. "Knowledge is power, and power frightens those who can't control it." The passage widened suddenly, opening into a circular chamber illuminated by the same mysterious blue light they'd seen at the entrance. The ceiling arched high above them, covered in intricate carvings that depicted scenes of a lost world, cities floating in the sky, people living in harmony with strange creatures, machines unlike anything in the modern world. In the center of the chamber stood a pedestal, and on it, unmistakably, was a cube identical to the one Ruboshi and Lysander had shown them. "We found it!" Luffy exclaimed. "The mystery cube." Robin approached the pedestal cautiously, studying the inscriptions carved around its base. "This is odd," she murmured. "These writings speak of the network and anchors of stability. They refer to the cube as a nexus key." "A what now?" "A nexus is a connection point, a place where multiple lines or paths intersect," Robin explained, circling the pedestal to read all the inscriptions. "This suggests the cubes aren't just keys to information, but physical links in some kind of system." Luffy scratched his head. "So it's a mystery cube that connects to other mystery cubes? What does it do?" "I'm not entirely sure," Robin admitted, her scholarly excitement mounting as she pieced together fragments of text. "But according to this, the keys were created to maintain equilibrium and prevent the awakening. They're fail-safes of some kind." "Fail-safes for what?" Before Robin could answer, a deep rumble shook the chamber, dust and small stones raining down from the ceiling. They exchanged alarmed glances. "That didn't sound good," Luffy observed unnecessarily. Another, stronger tremor followed, this one causing a crack to appear in one wall of the chamber. The blue light flickered ominously. "I think this place has been stable for centuries because of the key's presence," Robin said urgently. "If we remove it, everything collapses," Luffy finished, understanding immediately. "But we need the key, right?" Robin nodded, torn between academic responsibility and self-preservation. "The Ouroboros Society is collecting these keys for a reason. If they're fail-safes, removing them could be destabilizing something ancient and powerful." Another tremor, more violent than the last. The crack in the wall widened. "Decision time," Luffy said, suddenly serious. "Take it or leave it." "Your call, Robin." She looked at him in surprise. "My call? You're the captain." "Yeah, but you're the smart one about this stuff." He gestured at the ancient chamber. "I trust you." Those three simple words, "I trust you," hit Robin with unexpected force. After a lifetime of being distrusted, hunted, and betrayed, the simple faith Luffy placed in her judgment was perhaps the most precious gift she'd ever received. She made her decision, reaching for the cube. We take it. Better in our hands than theirs. The moment her fingers touched the cube, the chamber's rumbling intensified dramatically. The blue light flared painfully bright, then extinguished completely, plunging them into darkness as the structure around them began to collapse. Run! Luffy shouted, grabbing her hand again as Robin clutched the cube tightly in her other arm. They raced back toward the passage, debris falling around them as the ancient chamber disintegrated. The tunnel itself was beginning to collapse as well, sections of the ceiling crashing down just behind them as they sprinted for the exit. It's caving in too fast. Robin called out, seeing the tunnel ahead disappearing under rubble. Without hesitation, Luffy swept her into his arms, the cube pressed between them. Hang on tight. He launched himself forward with incredible speed, his rubber body bouncing off walls and debris as he maneuvered through the collapsing passage. Robin clung to him, the cube, and her composure as they hurtled through the darkness toward the increasingly distant point of light that marked the exit. We're not gonna make it. Luffy realized as a major section of the ceiling came down just ahead of them, blocking their path. Robin, can you make a chain of arms to pull us through that gap? He pointed to a small opening near the top of the rubble pile. She tried to focus, to call upon her devil fruit powers, but the sea's effects hadn't fully worn off. I can't, she admitted. Not yet. Then we do it the fun way. Luffy grinned, somehow finding excitement even in their dire situation. He wound up his arm, stretching it backward impossibly far. Gomu Gomu no. Pistol. His fist shot forward with tremendous force, smashing through the rubble blockage and creating a path just large enough for them to squeeze through. Without slowing, he carried Robin through the gap and toward the exit, daylight growing brighter ahead of them. They burst out onto the small beach just as the entire cliff face collapsed behind them, the secret passage permanently sealed by tons of rock and debris. The ground continued to shake beneath them, the beach itself beginning to crumble at the edges as the sea rose unnaturally high. The whole island is sinking. Robin realized in horror, watching as water began to flood the beach from all sides. Luffy set her down gently, scanning their surroundings for any means of escape. There was none, just the rising water and the sheer cliffs, now unstable and crumbling. Can you swim yet? He asked urgently. Robin shook her head. Not well enough for open sea. And you can't swim at all. The situation seemed hopeless, two devil fruit users trapped on a sinking island with no ship and no rescue in sight. The water was already at their ankles and rising fast. Luffy's face set in determination. Then we climb. He pointed to the least unstable section of cliff. I'll carry you. Luffy, those cliffs are collapsing. We'd never make it to the top before, got a better idea? He challenged. When she remained silent, he nodded grimly. Thought so. Come on, get on my back. You hold the cube. Despite her doubts, Robin did as he instructed, securing the ancient artifact inside her shirt before climbing onto Luffy's back, her arms wrapped around his neck. His rubber limbs made him an excellent climber under normal circumstances, but these cliffs were actively disintegrating beneath his fingers. Nevertheless, he began to scale the rock face with incredible determination, finding handholds where none should exist, his body stretching and contorting to navigate the crumbling surface. Robin held on tightly, acutely aware that if she fell, they would both be lost to the sea rising rapidly below them. They were halfway up when a major section of the cliff gave way, leaving them dangling by Luffy's one-handed grip on a precarious outcrop. The rock was slick with rain and crumbling beneath his fingers. Luffy! Robin cried as they began to slip. I've got this, he insisted through gritted teeth, though the strain in his voice betrayed him. His arm was stretching dangerously, the outcrop continuing to disintegrate in his grasp. In that moment, suspended between the collapsing cliff and the hungry sea below, Robin was struck by the absurd clarity that sometimes comes in life-or-death situations. Here she was, holding on to this incredible young man who had changed her life in every conceivable way. This boy who had declared war on the world for her sake, who had pulled her from the abyss of despair and given her a home, a family, a future. And she was in love with him. The realization should have been shocking, but instead, it felt like recognizing something she'd always known. Of course she loved him. How could she not? Luffy, she said, her voice steady despite their precarious position. If we don't make it, we're making it, he interrupted fiercely, still struggling to maintain his grip. Don't you dare say goodbye. I'm not saying goodbye, she corrected gently. I'm saying thank you. For everything. For seeing me when I was invisible. For coming for me when no one else ever had. His struggling paused momentarily as he twisted to look at her, their faces inches apart. Robin. The outcrop gave way completely. They fell, the sea rushing up to meet them with lethal certainty. Robin closed her eyes, bracing for impact, for the weakness that would claim them both as the water embraced them. Instead, she felt Luffy's body shift beneath her, his arms wrapping around her protectively as he twisted in midair to take the brunt of the impact himself. Gomu Gomu no. Balloon. His body inflated massively, creating a rubber cushion between Robin and the approaching water. They hit the surface with less force than she expected, Luffy's expanded form floating momentarily before he had to release the air, his devil fruit weakness taking hold. As they began to sink, a familiar voice called out from nearby, Luffy. Robin. Hang on. Through the rain and spray, Robin glimpsed the Thousand Sunny approaching rapidly, Chopper in heavy point leaning over the railing with his arms outstretched while Zoro prepared to dive in after them. Hope surged within her as she fought to keep Luffy's head above water, his strength completely sapped by the sea. We're here, she called back, summoning what little energy she had left to wave an arm. The Sunny pulled alongside them with perfect precision, Jinbe's expert helmsman skills on full display. Zoro dove into the water, powerful strokes bringing him to their side in seconds. He took Luffy from Robin's weakening grasp, while Sanji appeared with a rope ladder for her to climb. The cube, she gasped as Sanji helped her aboard, her soaked clothes clinging to her shivering form. We found it. Of course you did, Nami said with a relieved smile, wrapping a blanket around Robin's shoulders. You two are impossible to keep down. Across the deck, Chopper was already examining Luffy, who lay flat on his back, coughing up seawater but very much alive. His eyes found Robin's, and despite his exhausted state, he managed a weak grin and a thumbs up. Something passed between them in that moment, an understanding, a promise, an acknowledgement of what had almost been said on the cliff face. Robin smiled back, a genuine smile that reached her eyes and filled her heart. They had survived, together. And maybe, just maybe, they had found something even more valuable than an ancient artifact. So this is the second Nexus key, Jinbe observed later that evening as the crew gathered in the Sunny's aquarium bar. The cube sat on the table between them, its mysterious surface reflecting the gentle light from the fish tank. They had escaped the collapsing archipelago, Nami's navigation skills and Jinbe's mastery of the helm guiding them through the treacherous currents to open sea. The marine ships were nowhere to be seen, presumably still searching the far side of the island chain. Robin had spent hours studying the cube, comparing notes with what Roboshi had told them about the one from Fishman Island. Now, freshly bathed and recovered from their ordeal, she was sharing her findings with the crew. Yes, and I believe I understand their purpose better now, she said, indicating the ancient markings on the cube's surface. They're not merely keys to information, they're control mechanisms for something the ancients built and then decided was too dangerous to leave active. So they created these failsafes to keep it dormant? Frankie asked, examining the cube with professional interest. Super advanced technology. Robin nodded. The inscriptions refer to the sleeper beneath the waves and chains of balance. I believe there's something, a weapon perhaps, or a power source, hidden in the ocean depths, and these cubes are what keep it contained. And the Ouroboros Society is collecting them. Why? Sanji asked, setting down a tray of hot drinks for everyone. To wake up this ancient weapon? Or to control it themselves, Robin suggested grimly. Either way, we now have one of the keys they need, which means we've bought ourselves some time. Unless they come after us for it, Usopp pointed out nervously. Let them come, Zoro said with a predatory smile, patting his swords. We'll be ready. The conversation continued, the crew discussing their next moves and the implications of what they'd discovered. Robin participated, but her attention kept drifting to Luffy, who was uncharacteristically quiet as he sat at the edge of the group, sipping the hot chocolate Sanji had prepared. He looked lost in thought, another unusual state for their typically impulsive captain. When he caught her watching him, he didn't grin or make a joke as she expected. Instead, he held her gaze steadily, something unspoken passing between them before he returned his attention to the discussion. Later, as the meeting broke up and the crew dispersed for the night, Robin found herself alone in the aquarium bar, still studying the cube by the soft light of the fish tank. She sensed rather than heard someone enter, not needing to look up to know who it was. You should be resting, Captain, she said softly. Chopper's orders. Luffy dropped into the seat beside her, closer than strictly necessary. Can't sleep. Too much thinking. That seems to be becoming a habit with you, she observed with a small smile. Should I be concerned? He laughed quietly. Probably. Then, more seriously, you never finished what you were going to say. On the cliff, before we fell. Robin's heart quickened. She had hoped he might forget that moment in the chaos that followed, or at least not bring it up so directly. But direct was Luffy's way, no subterfuge, no games. I was just expressing gratitude, she said carefully, not quite meeting his eyes. For all you've done for me. Didn't sound like just gratitude, he pressed, surprisingly perceptive. Sounded more important. Robin took a deep breath, weighing her options. She could deflect, change the subject, retreat behind the walls she'd built over a lifetime of protecting herself from vulnerability. The safe choice. Or she could be brave in a way that had nothing to do with facing external enemies. When we were falling, she said quietly, I realized something. Something I should have seen much sooner. She finally looked at him directly. I care for you, Luffy. Not just as my captain, or as a friend. As, more. She waited for confusion, for discomfort, for the polite letdown she half expected. Luffy wasn't known for romantic entanglements or even interest in such matters. In all their adventures, he had never shown particular attraction to anyone. Instead, he reached out and took her hand, his smaller fingers interlacing with hers just as they had to open the ancient door. I know, he said simply. I feel the same way. Robin stared at him, genuinely shocked for perhaps the first time since joining his crew. You do. He nodded, a slight blush coloring his cheeks. Yeah. Have for a while, I think. Just didn't have a name for it until recently. He squeezed her hand gently. When I saw you not breathing on that beach. I've never been so scared. Not even when Ace. He trailed off, but Robin understood. The loss of his brother had been the defining trauma of Luffy's life. For him to compare the fear of losing her to that pain spoke volumes. So what does this mean? She asked softly, her usual confidence wavering in this unfamiliar territory. For us, for the crew. Luffy considered this with surprising thoughtfulness. Don't know exactly, he admitted. Never done this before. But I know I want you beside me, not just as my archaeologist or my nakama, but as, my Robin. The simple possessiveness of it, my Robin, should have triggered all her old fears of being controlled, owned, used. Instead, it felt right, because she knew what he meant. Not ownership, but belonging. The same way she thought of him as my Luffy in the privacy of her mind. And I want you beside me, she confessed. Not just as my captain, but as my Luffy. His face lit up with that radiant, infectious smile that had first begun melting the ice around her heart. Without warning, he leaned forward and pressed his lips to hers, an impulsive, inexpert kiss that nonetheless sent warmth spreading through her entire body. When he pulled back, looking both pleased and slightly embarrassed, Robin couldn't help but laugh softly. "Was that your first kiss, Captain?" His blush deepened. "Maybe. Was it bad?" "Not at all," she assured him, reaching up to touch his face gently. "But like most things worth doing, it improves with practice." "I'm a fast learner," he grinned, leaning in again. Their second kiss was longer, sweeter, both of them finding their way together. Robin marveled at how natural it felt, how right, as if this had always been the inevitable destination of their journey together. When they finally parted, Luffy kept his face close to hers, their foreheads touching. "So you're my girlfriend now?" he tested the word, sounding both excited and uncertain. Robin smiled. "If you'd like me to be." "Yeah," he nodded decisively. "I would." They sat together in comfortable silence for a while, hands still joined, the soft bubbling of the aquarium the only sound. Robin felt a peace she had rarely known, the quiet certainty that she was exactly where she belonged, with exactly the right person. "We should probably tell the crew," Luffy said eventually. "They're gonna notice anyway." "Nami already suspects," Robin admitted. "She's remarkably observant about these things." "And Sanji's gonna cry," Luffy added with a mischievous grin. "A lot." Robin laughed, imagining the dramatic reactions of their crewmates. "Perhaps we should break it to them gently. Or we could just walk into breakfast holding hands and see what happens," Luffy suggested with his typical flair for the direct approach. "Always the strategist," she teased, leaning in to kiss him again briefly. "But perhaps in this case, your way is best." Morning found 1,000 sunny sailing through calm seas under clear skies, as if the previous day's storms had never happened. The crew gathered for breakfast in the galley, everyone in high spirits after their narrow escape and successful acquisition of the Nexus key. Robin and Luffy entered last, their fingers intertwined in a casual but unmistakable gesture. The conversation around the table died instantly, all eyes turning to their joined hands. Nami was the first to break into a wide, knowing smile. "Finally." Usopp's jaw dropped. "Wait, what? When did this happen?" Zoro merely raised an eyebrow, then returned to his food with a small smirk, as if he'd been expecting this all along. Brook laughed his distinctive skull laugh. "Yo-ho-ho-ho. Love blooms on the high seas." Jinbe offered a dignified nod of approval, while Frankie struck his signature pose and declared it super romantic. Chopper looked between them with wide, innocent eyes. "Does this mean Robin is like our mom now?" Sanji, as predicted, dropped the serving dish he was holding and fell to his knees with a dramatic wail. "My sweet Robin Chuan. Taken by this meat-obsessed rubber man. The cruelty of fate." "Sorry, Sanji," Luffy said, not sounding particularly sorry as he guided Robin to their seats. "But Robin's my girlfriend now." The declaration, so straightforward and unembellished, was quintessentially Luffy. No grand speech, no elaborate explanation, just the simple truth, stated as a fact as indisputable as his determination to become Pirate King. Robin felt a rush of affection for him and for their eccentric, wonderful crew as they bombarded them with questions, congratulations, and in Sanji's case, theatrical despair quickly followed by grudging acceptance in the form of extra special coffee prepared just for her. "So what happened on that island?" Nami asked eagerly. "You two were alone for hours before we found you. We explored an ancient ruin, almost got crushed, nearly drowned, and realized we're in love," Luffy summarized between mouthfuls of food, as casually as if describing a normal Tuesday. "That's quite the eventful day," Jinbe observed with dry understatement. "Just another adventure," Robin smiled, her eyes meeting Luffy's across the table. "Though this one had a particularly nice ending." The conversation shifted to their next destination and the implications of the Nexus key, the crew adjusting to the new dynamic between their captain and archaeologist with remarkable ease. By the end of breakfast, it already felt normal, as if this was how things had always been meant to be. Later, as they stood together at the Sunny's figurehead, Luffy's special spot that he now seemed happy to share with her, Robin reflected on the extraordinary journey that had brought her here. From the lonely, hunted child of O'Hara to the trusted companion and now lover of the future Pirate King. It was a path she could never have imagined, yet now couldn't imagine any other. "What are you thinking about?" Luffy asked, his arm around her waist as they watched the horizon. "How unpredictable life can be," she replied honestly. "How the darkest moments can lead to the brightest futures." He nodded sagely, though she suspected the philosophical nature of her observation might be lost on him. "Like when I got eaten by that giant fish at Thriller Bark, but then found a bunch of treasure inside it?" Robin laughed, leaning into him. "Something like that, yes." "Robin," he said, suddenly more serious. "I don't know much about relationship stuff. I might mess up sometimes." "I expect we both will," she assured him. "Neither of us has much experience with this. But I know one thing for sure," he continued, turning to face her fully. "You're important to me. Really important. And I want you beside me, not just until we find the One Piece or I become Pirate King, but always." The simple declaration, so earnest and heartfelt, moved Robin deeply. "Always is a very long time, Luffy." "Not long enough," he replied with absolute certainty. As the Thousand Sunny carried them toward new adventures and unknown dangers, Robin found herself believing him. For the first time in her life, always didn't sound like an impossible dream, but a promise she wanted very much to keep. Word of the change in relationship between the Straw Hat Captain and his archaeologist spread quickly through the pirate grapevine. Within days, exaggerated stories were circulating in taverns and ports across the Grand Line. Some claimed Luffy had fought a Sea King with his bare hands to win Robin's heart. Others insisted Robin had bewitched him with ancient magic from the Void Century. The truth, as always, was both simpler and more profound: two people who had found in each other exactly what they needed, when they needed it most. For the Straw Hat crew, the new development was quickly absorbed into the fabric of their daily life. Luffy remained their impulsive, adventure-seeking captain, though now he occasionally paused to exchange a smile or brief touch with Robin during their escapades. Robin was still their calm, intellectual archaeologist, though she laughed more freely now and sometimes joined in Luffy's more harmless antics. If Sanji spent a few days in theatrical mourning before returning to his usual flirtatious self, now with the understanding that Robin was firmly off-limits, if Nami sometimes smirked knowingly when she caught them holding hands, if Zoro occasionally rolled his eyes at their quiet moments of affection, it was all part of the complex, loving dynamic of the Straw Hat family. And if sometimes, late at night when the rest of the crew was asleep, Robin would find Luffy in the library or on the figurehead, and they would talk for hours about dreams and fears and hopes for the future, well, that was their business alone. As for the Nexus key and the mysterious danger it represented, it remained secure in Robin's study, carefully stored until they could determine its true purpose and the best way to prevent the Ouroboros Society from collecting the others. But that was a challenge for another day. For now, the Thousand Sunny sailed on through blue seas under bluer skies, carrying its crew of dreamers, fighters, and nakama toward the horizon, and whatever adventures awaited them there. And at the heart of it all, a rubber boy who would be king and the demon child who had finally found her home, navigating not just the treacherous waters of the Grand Line, but the equally challenging and infinitely more rewarding waters of love. Together. Always. Chapter 3, Coronation. There it is, Robin said, pointing toward the island emerging from the morning mist. Raftel Minor. The crew gathered at the Sunny's bow, staring at the mysterious landmass that had appeared after 3 weeks of sailing through increasingly strange waters. Unlike its legendary namesake, Raftel, the final island of the Grand Line where the One Piece supposedly waited, this island wasn't marked on any conventional maps. "Looks spooky," Usopp muttered, already developing a case of can't go on that island disease. He wasn't wrong. Even from a distance, there was something unsettling about the place. Twisted stone spires jutted from dense jungle, and what appeared to be the remains of massive structures peeked through the vegetation. The shoreline itself seemed wrong somehow, too perfectly curved, as if carved by deliberate hands rather than natural erosion. The stories say it was once a satellite colony of the ancient kingdom, Robin explained, her eyes gleaming with scholarly excitement. A port where knowledge and treasures were gathered before being transported to the kingdom's heart. Luffy hopped onto the railing beside her, balancing easily as he squinted at their destination. So there's treasure. Robin smiled, unable to resist reaching out to straighten his crooked straw hat. The casual intimacy of the gesture wasn't lost on the crew, who had adapted surprisingly well to their captain and archaeologist's relationship over the past weeks. Perhaps, she answered. Though likely not the kind you're thinking of. Nami, studying the island through a spyglass, frowned. There's something weird about the currents around the northern shore. They're moving in patterns that don't make sense naturally. Like the archipelago where we found the Nexus key, Jinbe noted, his experienced helmsman's eye detecting the same anomalies. Engineered waterways, perhaps. That would be consistent with what we know of the ancient kingdom's technology, Robin agreed. They were said to have mastered control of the elements in ways lost to modern science. Frankie struck his signature pose. Super ancient engineering. I can't wait to see it up close. We should approach with caution, Robin advised, more serious now. If the Nexus key we found was a failsafe to keep something dormant, and this island was connected to the ancient kingdom, then whatever that key was locking might be here, Zoro finished, his hand resting on his swords. Luffy jumped down from the railing, his usual carefree grin replaced by the more focused expression he wore when sensing danger ahead. Doesn't matter. We came this far to find out what those Ouroboros guys are up to. We're going. He turned to Robin, reaching for her hand in a gesture that had become natural between them. But we stick together. After what happened at the archipelago, I'm not letting you out of my sight. Trying to protect me, Captain, she teased gently, though she laced her fingers with his. Trying to protect each other, he corrected, surprising her with his insightfulness. Robin felt that now familiar warmth spread through her chest. Over the weeks since they'd acknowledged their feelings, Luffy had revealed depths she hadn't fully appreciated before, moments of perception and emotional intelligence that belied his normally straightforward nature. All right, people, Nami called, taking charge of the practical details as usual. We need a plan. Who's going ashore and who's staying with the ship? I'm going, Luffy declared immediately. And Robin's going because she can read the old stuff. I should go as well, Jinbe offered. If there are underwater structures as the currents suggest, my abilities would be useful. In the end, they decided that Robin, Luffy, Jinbe, Nami, and Chopper would form the exploration party, while Zoro, Sanji, Frankie, Usopp, and Brook remained with the Sunny as a defensive team. With the Ouroboros Society still hunting them for the Nexus key they possessed, leaving the ship unprotected would be foolish. As they prepared the Mini Mary for the trip to shore, Robin carefully packed her archaeological tools and notebooks. The Nexus key they'd found weeks ago was securely stored in a special case Frankie had designed, a reinforced box with a C-prism stone core that would mask its energy signature from detection. You bringing that with us? Luffy asked, nodding toward the case. Robin hesitated. I believe we might need it. If this island contains information about the ancient kingdom's technology, the key could be connected. Luffy trusted her judgment without question. Okay. But if anything happens, the key goes overboard rather than into enemy hands, she finished for him. I remember our agreement. He grinned, pressing a quick kiss to her cheek that still made her blush slightly. Public displays of affection were new territory for both of them, and while Luffy was characteristically uninhibited, Robin was still adjusting to the openness of their relationship. That's my smart girlfriend, he declared proudly, causing Nami to roll her eyes good-naturedly as she passed by with navigation equipment. "If you two are done being adorable, we need to get moving," the navigator said. "The tide's shifting, and those weird currents will be stronger soon." The journey to shore proved more challenging than anticipated. The Mini Mary struggled against currents that seemed to actively resist their approach, forcing Jinbe to enter the water and guide the small craft manually. Even with the fishman's incredible strength and mastery of water, they were pushed off course several times. "It's like the island doesn't want visitors," Chopper observed nervously as they finally neared the beach. "Or it's selective about who it allows to approach," Robin suggested, studying the shoreline with keen interest. "Look at the pattern in the sand." The others followed her gaze to where the waves met the beach. Instead of the normal chaotic patterns of tidal erosion, the sand was marked with perfectly symmetrical ripples that extended the entire visible length of the shore. "That's not natural," Nami stated flatly. "No," Robin agreed. "It's a warning. Or a welcome, depending on who's arriving." They beached the Mini Mary on the strange shore, securing it well above the tidal before venturing further. The jungle began almost immediately beyond the sand, dense and primeval, yet with an unsettling geometric quality to its layout, as if the trees had been planted in precise patterns that had only partially succumbed to nature's disorder over the centuries. "There's a path," Jinbe noted, pointing to a narrow opening in the vegetation where the undergrowth was noticeably thinner. Luffy, already several steps ahead, called back excitedly, "Come on. Adventure time." Robin smiled at his enthusiasm, though her scholarly mind was racing with observations and theories. The flora itself was unlike anything she'd seen in the Grand Line, species that shouldn't coexist growing side by side, some bearing fruits or flowers that matched no known botanical reference in her extensive reading. "These plants," she murmured, pausing to examine a particularly unusual specimen, a vine with transparent leaves through which the sunlight cast rainbow-like projections. "They're not natural to this climate. Some may not be natural at all. Engineered, like the currents?" Jinbe asked, fascinated despite himself. Robin nodded. The ancient kingdom was said to have created life forms for specific purposes. These could be remnants of their experiments, surviving all these centuries in isolation. "They're pretty," Chopper offered, though he stayed carefully away from the strange plants, his animal instincts clearly warning him of potential danger. As they followed the path deeper into the jungle, Robin became increasingly certain they were being guided. The route, while appearing wild at first glance, had too many conveniences: natural bridges over ravines, clearings placed at perfect intervals for rest, streams that crossed their path precisely where thirst might become an issue. "This isn't a path," she realized aloud. "It's a test." "A test of what?" Nami asked, swatting at insects that seemed particularly attracted to her. "Worthiness, perhaps," Robin speculated. "Or simply sentience. The ability to recognize patterns and follow them consciously rather than by chance." Luffy, who had been uncharacteristically quiet for several minutes, suddenly stopped. "Someone's watching us." The others tensed, scanning the jungle for threats. Robin activated her devil fruit ability, sprouting eyes along nearby trees to expand their surveillance. "There," she confirmed, pointing to a dense thicket to their right. "Something humanoid, but strange." Before anyone could react, Luffy stretched his arm into the vegetation, grabbing whatever lurked there and yanking it into view. The creature that tumbled onto the path was indeed humanoid, but like nothing they'd ever encountered. Standing just over a meter tall, it had a body covered in what appeared to be a combination of scales and moss. Its face was roughly human in structure but with oversized eyes that blinked vertically and a mouth that extended nearly ear to ear. Instead of clothes, it wore intricate patterns painted or tattooed onto its scaly skin. "What is that?" Nami gasped, stepping back. The creature chittered angrily at Luffy, who still held it by what passed for its shoulder. "Hey, little guy," Luffy greeted it with his usual lack of fear toward strange beings. "We're just exploring. You live here?" To everyone's shock, the creature responded in heavily accented but understandable language. Trespassers. Sacred ground. Forbidden. Robin stepped forward cautiously, her academic curiosity overriding caution. You speak our language? The creature turned its unsettling gaze to her. All languages known. Part of duty. It scrutinized her more carefully, then Luffy, then the others in turn. Its massive eyes widened further. You, bring key. Robin felt a chill run through her. You know about the Nexus key? The creature began a series of agitated movements, hopping from foot to foot and waving its long-fingered hands. Keybringers. Awakeners. Doomcallers. Wait, no, Robin said quickly. We're not here to awaken anything. We're trying to prevent that from happening. The creature froze, studying her with renewed intensity. Truth. It seemed to taste the word, testing her sincerity. Truth, Robin confirmed. A group called the Ouroboros Society is collecting the keys. We took one to keep it from them. After a tense moment, the creature nodded once, sharply. Follow. Elders decide. It turned and scampered down the path without waiting to see if they followed. Should we trust it? Nami whispered. Do we have a choice? Jinbe countered reasonably. We came for information, and this being clearly knows about the keys. Luffy made the decision for them all, already striding after the creature. Come on. This just got way more interesting. Robin hurried to catch up with him, her mind racing with implications. If these beings have been here since the time of the ancient kingdom, then they might know everything about the Nexus keys and what they're for, Luffy finished, surprising her again with his quick grasp of the situation. The creature led them deeper into the jungle, the path now descending steadily. The vegetation grew stranger, plants that seemed to react to their presence, moving subtly as they passed, fruits that glowed with inner light, flowers that emitted soft, musical tones rather than scents. Finally, they emerged into a vast clearing dominated by what Robin immediately recognized as ancient ruins, but ruins unlike any she had studied before. These structures weren't crumbling with age. They stood intact, their surfaces gleaming with materials that shouldn't have survived centuries of exposure to the elements. And they weren't abandoned. Dozens of creatures like their guide moved among the structures, carrying out incomprehensible tasks with tools that blended primitive simplicity with hints of advanced technology. Some tended to gardens of the strange plants they had observed. Others appeared to be maintaining the buildings themselves, applying substances that made the materials shimmer and strengthen before their eyes. What are they? Chopper whispered, hiding behind Luffy's leg as he often did when frightened. Guardians, Robin breathed in realization. Created by the ancient kingdom to protect this place after they were gone. Their guide led them toward the largest structure, a domed building with symbols etched into its surface that Robin recognized as the same language found on the poneglyphs, though in a more elaborate, decorative script than the utilitarian carvings of the stone cubes. Temple of Time, the creature announced, gesturing at the building. Elders wait. Inside, the dome opened into a circular chamber filled with soft, ambient light that seemed to have no specific source. At the center stood a table-like structure with a depression that Robin immediately recognized as matching the dimensions of the Nexus key. Around this table stood three of the creatures, distinguishable from their guide by their larger size and the more elaborate patterns decorating their bodies. Keybringers, their guide announced, then retreated to the edge of the chamber. The central elder stepped forward, its vertical slit eyes fixed on Robin. You carry the third key, it stated rather than asked. Why? Robin glanced at Luffy, who nodded encouragingly, then stepped forward. To protect it from those who would use it to awaken whatever the keys were designed to contain. The elder made a sound like stones sliding together, a laugh, perhaps. Not contain. Control. It gestured to the walls around them, covered in the ancient script. Story written here. History forgotten. The void century, Robin breathed, her heart racing with academic excitement. You know what happened during those missing 100 years? We lived it, another elder said simply. We remember. We guard. The implications were staggering. These beings weren't just guardians created to protect ruins, they were living witnesses to the lost civilization that had been systematically erased from history by the world government. Will you share your knowledge? Robin asked, trying to keep her voice steady despite her excitement. I've spent my life searching for the truth of the Void Century. The third elder, who had remained silent until now, approached her with a shuffling gait. Truth dangerous. Why seek? Because without understanding the past, we can't build a better future, Robin replied with the conviction of a lifetime's dedication. Because the world government's tyranny is built on the foundation of that buried truth. The elder studied her face, then Luffy's, then looked at the others. You travel with D. The statement sent a shock through Robin. The elder had recognized the significance of Luffy's middle initial, the mysterious D, that connected him to an ancient lineage including Gold Roger and others who had defied the world's order. You know what the D means? Luffy asked, stepping forward. Destroyers, the first elder replied. Changers. Stormbringers. It turned back to Robin. You bring D and Key together. Dangerous combination. We didn't come to destroy anything, Robin assured them. We came to understand. The elders conferred briefly in a language unlike any Robin had heard, clicks and whistles and rumbling tones that seemed physically impossible for their mouth structures to produce. Finally, the central elder addressed them again. We show truth. Then you decide. Dangerous knowledge. Heavy responsibility. It gestured to the table-like structure. Place key. Robin hesitated, looking to Luffy again. This was exactly the kind of situation they had discussed. Placing the Nexus key in an unknown mechanism could trigger precisely what they were trying to prevent. Luffy studied the elders for a long moment, his usual carefree demeanor replaced by the intensity he showed in moments of true importance. Finally, he nodded. I trust them. And I trust you. That simple statement, I trust you, still had the power to move Robin deeply. She removed the Nexus key from its protective case and approached the table. With careful precision, she placed the cube into the depression, where it fit perfectly. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the key began to glow with the same blue light they had witnessed in the collapsing chamber weeks before. The light spread from the key to the table, then to channels carved into the floor that Robin hadn't noticed previously, illuminating a complex pattern that covered the entire chamber. The dome above them transformed, the solid material becoming transparent, revealing not the sky but what appeared to be a three-dimensional map of the world, continents in configurations Robin didn't recognize, with pulsing points of light at specific locations. The world as it was, the elder explained. Before the great reshaping. Reshaping? Nami asked, her cartographer's interest piqued. You mean the continents moved? Not naturally, the second elder clarified. The ancient kingdom possessed power to alter land, sea, sky. Power too great. Power that attracted envy, fear. The 20 kings, Robin guessed, referring to the monarchs who had formed the world government at the end of the Void Century. The elder nodded. 20 kings feared power they could not control. Attacked in unified force. Kingdom fought back. Escalation. Desperation. A war, Jinbe realized. One so devastating it literally changed the face of the world. Final weapon created, the third elder continued the story, gesturing to the map where a massive point of light pulsed at what appeared to be the center of a now non-existent continent. Weapon to reshape all. To start anew. But such power. Robin breathed, beginning to understand. Could not be controlled fully, the first elder confirmed. Creator realized too late. Built failsafes, the keys, to regulate power after activation. Programmed shutdown sequence. But damage done. World changed forever. The map shifted, showing land masses breaking apart, new seas forming, entire continents sinking beneath the waves. It was cataclysmic, apocalyptic, the literal reshaping of the world. And the survivors? Chopper asked quietly. Few, the second elder said solemnly. Kingdom destroyed utterly. 20 kings claimed victory, established new order, rewrote history. Forbade knowledge of weapon, of power, of past world. They erased 100 years of history to hide what they'd done, Robin realized, the academic puzzle she'd spent her life trying to solve finally taking shape. And to hide the weapon's existence. Weapon sleeps now, the first elder said, pointing to the map where a point of light pulsed beneath what Robin recognized as the calm belt. Keys maintain sleep. 7 keys, 7 aspects of control. Time. Space. Matter. Energy. Mind. Soul. Reality. And the Ouroboros Society wants to collect all 7 to awaken this weapon, Luffy concluded, his expression grim. To reshape the world again. Or control it for themselves, Robin added. Ultimate power. The ability to literally remake reality according to their desires. The implications were terrifying. No wonder both the world government and the Ouroboros Society were so determined to find the keys. Such power would make its wielder virtually godlike. You possess third key, the key of matter, the elder explained. Controls physical transformation aspects of weapon. Without all 7 in correct sequence, weapon awakens chaotically. Destruction without purpose. End without renewal. So if the Ouroboros Society gets even one wrong. Nami paled at the thought. Then instead of controlling the weapon, they'd just trigger a world-ending catastrophe, Jinbe finished grimly. But wait, Chopper interjected. If these keys are so dangerous, why were they separated instead of destroyed? The elders exchanged looks that Robin interpreted as something like resignation. Keys cannot be destroyed, the third elder explained. Attempt triggers failsafe, immediate awakening. Keys designed to outlast civilization itself. So they were hidden instead, Robin concluded. Scattered across the world, guarded by different factions who may not even have known what they were protecting. Correct, the first elder confirmed. Some keys given to kingdom's allies. Some hidden in secret places. Some, like third key, placed with guardians specifically created to protect. Until someone started collecting them again, Luffy said. But why now? After all this time? The elders conferred again in their strange language, seemingly debating how much to reveal. Cycle comes to completion, the second elder finally said. Weapon stirs in sleep every 1,000 years. Time of vulnerability. Time when keys call to those with ears to hear. And the Ouroboros Society was listening, Robin realized. They come here, the first elder said suddenly, pointing to the chamber's entrance. Soon. Many ships approach island. Society and others. Others? Jinbe asked sharply. World government forces. Both seek keys. Both detected third key's activation here. We need to get back to the Sunny, Luffy decided immediately, his captain's instincts taking over. Warn the others. Wait, Robin said, turning back to the elders. The Nexus key, should we take it with us or leave it in your protection? Another conference among the elders, shorter this time. Take, the first elder finally decided. Guardians too few now. Cannot repel combined forces. Key safer with D-Carrier and Knowledge Seeker. It fixed Robin with its unnerving gaze. You understand now. Heavy responsibility. Robin nodded solemnly as she retrieved the Nexus key from the table. The projected map vanished, the dome returning to its solid state. There is more, the elder said as Robin turned to leave. Knowledge we would share with Knowledge Seeker alone. Robin glanced at Luffy, who frowned slightly but nodded. We'll start heading back to the Mini Mary, he said. Catch up quick, okay? And be careful. I will, she promised, touched by his concern but grateful for his trust. As the others left with their original guide, Robin turned back to the elders. What knowledge? The central elder approached her, placing one long-fingered hand on the Nexus key she held. Keys have secondary purpose. Not just control weapon, can access weapons' power in smaller ways. Useful ways. What do you mean? Each key contains fraction of weapon's ability. Matter key allows limited transformation of physical world. Small scale. Robin stared at the cube in her hands with new understanding. It's not just a key, it's a tool. For right wielder, the elder confirmed. One with knowledge and purpose. How would I? The elder interrupted her with an urgent gesture. No time for teaching. Ship's too close. It pressed something into her hand, a small crystalline object that resembled a memory dial but with unfamiliar components. Instructions here. Study later. Now go. Protect key. Remember purpose. Robin secured both the Nexus key and the crystal in her bag. Thank you for sharing your knowledge. I won't misuse it. We know, the elder said with surprising certainty. We see bond between knowledge seeker and D-carrier. Strong bond. Necessary bond for days ahead. Before Robin could ask what it meant, a distant explosion shook the ground beneath them. Go, the elder urged. They arrive. Robin raced through the jungle, following the path they had taken earlier. Her mind was reeling from the revelations in the temple, but her focus remained sharp. They needed to reach the Sunny before whoever was attacking the island cut off their escape. Another explosion, closer this time, sent birds scattering from the canopy above. Robin pushed herself faster, sprouting eyes ahead to locate her companions. She found them at a fork in the path, Luffy pacing anxiously while the others conferred with their guide. Robin. Luffy spotted her immediately, rushing to meet her. What happened? We heard explosions. The island is under attack, she confirmed breathlessly. Both the Ouroboros Society and world government forces, according to the elders. The little guy says there's a faster way back to the beach, Nami explained, pointing to where their guide was indicating a narrow path that plunged steeply downward. A tunnel system that runs beneath the jungle. Can we trust him? Robin asked, studying the creature who had seemed alarmed by the explosions. Guardians protect keybringers, it insisted. Ancient oath. This way safe. Fast. Another explosion, close enough that they could see smoke rising above the trees, made the decision for them. Let's go, Luffy ordered, taking Robin's hand. Stay together. The tunnel entrance was concealed beneath a seemingly solid rock formation that the Guardian activated with a complex sequence of touches. Inside, the passage was illuminated by the same mysterious ambient light they had seen in the temple, revealing a smooth-walled corridor that sloped gently downward. These tunnels connect entire island, their guide explained as it led them at a rapid pace. Built for evacuation when kingdom fell. They knew they were losing the war, Robin realized. They prepared escape routes. Many escaped. Scattered across world. Became ancestors of D-carriers, the creature confirmed, glancing at Luffy. Some stayed to guard knowledge, secrets. Became guardians over generations. As they hurried through the tunnels, Robin filled the others in on what the elders had revealed about the weapon and the true purpose of the Nexus keys. She omitted the personal information about the key's secondary abilities, uncertain whether to share that knowledge even with her crewmates until she understood it better herself. So this weapon can literally reshape the world? Nami asked, horrified. And the Ouroboros Society wants to control it? Not just them, Robin reminded her. The world government as well. Either would be catastrophic. The society seems to want to use it for some unknown purpose, while the government likely wants to ensure it remains dormant and hidden. Or to use it themselves, Jinbe suggested grimly. Ultimate power tends to corrupt ultimate institutions. They had been moving through the tunnels for perhaps 20 minutes when their guide suddenly stopped, its head tilting as if listening to sounds beyond their hearing. Above, it chittered anxiously. Fighting above. Luffy looked at Robin. The Sunny? She closed her eyes, concentrating as she extended her devil fruit power upward, creating a chain of eyes through the earth and vegetation above. What she saw made her blood run cold. The beach is a battlefield, she reported urgently. Marine vessels engaging with what appear to be Ouroboros ships. And she hesitated, focusing her created eye more carefully. The Sunny is surrounded. Zoro and the others are defending against boarders from both factions. We need to get up there now, Luffy declared. Their guide chittered again, more urgently. Exit ahead. Leads to cliffs above beach. Can see whole bay. They followed at a run now, the tunnel beginning to slope upward until they reached what appeared to be a dead end. The Guardian pressed its hands against the smooth wall in another complex pattern, and a section of the ceiling retracted, revealing a narrow shaft with built-in handholds leading upward. Climb, it instructed. Guardian returns to elders now. Temple must be protected. Thank you for your help, Robin told the creature sincerely. It fixed her with its unsettling gaze one last time. Remember purpose, it echoed the elder's words. D and knowledge together. Balance. Before she could ask what it meant, the creature had vanished back down the tunnel, leaving them to make the climb alone. Luffy went first, his natural agility making quick work of the shaft. The others followed, with Jinbe bringing up the rear in case anyone slipped. When they emerged onto the cliff top, the situation below became immediately clear, and it was worse than Robin had seen through her created eyes. The bay was chaos. 3 marine battleships exchanged cannon fire with 4 sleeker vessels bearing the Ouroboros Society's snake emblem. Smaller craft from both factions crowded the beach, disgorging armed forces that seemed more interested in reaching the jungle than in fighting each other. And in the center of it all, the thousand Sunny fought for its life. Zoro, Sanji, and Brook formed a perimeter on the deck, cutting down boarders from both factions. Frankie operated the ship's defensive weapons from the upper deck, while Usopp provided covering fire from the crow's nest. They're holding their own, Nami observed with relief. But they're pinned down, they can't escape with all those ships blocking the bay. And we're cut off from them, Jinbe added grimly, pointing to the beach where dozens of armed combatants stood between them and the Mini Mary, which had apparently been discovered and was now guarded by marine soldiers. Luffy cracked his knuckles, his expression hardening into the focused intensity that preceded serious battles. Then we make a path. Wait, Robin cautioned, placing a hand on his arm. Look. She pointed to a figure standing on the beach, directing marine forces with authoritative gestures. Even from this distance, there was no mistaking the distinctive white coat and cap of a marine admiral, or the glint of light off the sword strapped to his hip. Admiral Fujitora, Jinbe identified him grimly. This situation just became significantly more dangerous. And there, Chopper added, pointing to the largest Ouroboros vessel. Isn't that Lysander? Robin followed his gaze and confirmed that the silver-haired man who had first approached them about the Nexus key was indeed directing operations from the deck of the Ouroboros flagship. Beside him stood the red-haired woman with the wind devil fruit powers who had caused them so much trouble before. They're both after the Nexus key, Robin realized. Neither knows we have it with us rather than on the Sunny. Which gives us an advantage, Nami said thoughtfully. They're focusing their efforts on capturing the ship, not hunting us specifically. Luffy punched his palm decisively. Here's the plan. Jinbe, you're strongest in the water, can you swim around to the Sunny and help the others break free? The fishman nodded. The currents are chaotic, but nothing I can't handle. What about the rest of you? Nami and Chopper, stay with Robin, Luffy continued. Protect the key. I'm going to create a distraction big enough for Jinbe to reach the ship unnoticed. Robin frowned. What kind of distraction? Luffy grinned, that reckless, confident smile that somehow always made her heart race despite the danger it inevitably preceded. The loud kind. Before anyone could object, he stepped to the edge of the cliff, drew in a massive breath, and bellowed at the top of his lungs, "Hey! Ouroboros jerks and marine idiots. Looking for this?" He pointed dramatically to Robin, who held up the Nexus key container just long enough to be visible from the beach before quickly returning it to her bag. The effect was immediate and dramatic. Both Fujitora and Lysander whipped around to locate the source of the shout, as did dozens of their subordinates. "That's our cue," Jinbe said, already moving toward the cliff edge where it dropped directly into the sea. "Good luck, and be careful." With that, he dove gracefully into the waters below, his powerful form cutting through the chaotic currents with practiced ease. "Luffy, what's the rest of the plan?" Nami demanded, clearly unimpressed with the "create a distraction" part that had now succeeded all too well. "Run!" Luffy suggested cheerfully, grabbing Robin's hand as he sprinted away from the cliff edge just as the first cannonballs began impacting the spot where they'd been standing. They raced along the cliff top, Chopper transforming into his walk point for greater speed while Nami struggled to keep up, cursing Luffy's impulsiveness with every breath. Robin created eyes behind them to monitor their pursuers. "Marine forces are scaling the cliffside," she reported. "And Lysander's companion, the Wind User, is flying toward us with several others." "Perfect," Luffy declared, as if being hunted by powerful enemies was exactly what he'd hoped for. "How is this perfect?" Nami demanded between gasps for air. "Because they're chasing us instead of attacking the Sunny," Luffy explained with impeccable captain logic. "That gives Jinbe and the others a chance to break free." Robin had to admit the strategy, while reckless, was sound. "But we still need a plan for ourselves," she pointed out. "We can't outrun them forever." Luffy slowed just enough to scoop Nami onto his back, ignoring her startled yelp. "The Guardians said the tunnels connect the whole island, right? We find another entrance, go back underground, and lose them." "That's actually not a terrible idea," Nami admitted reluctantly, clinging to Luffy's shoulders. They continued along the cliff top until the path began to descend toward the jungle. Behind them, the sounds of pursuit grew louder, shouts from marine soldiers and the distinctive whooshing of the Wind Devil Fruit User's aerial approach. "There!" Chopper called, his sensitive nose twitching. "I smell the same mineral scent as the tunnels, coming from those rocks." He pointed to a formation similar to the one that had concealed their exit. But as they approached, a new problem became apparent. "We don't know the access pattern," Robin realized. "Our guide activated the doors with specific sequences." "Stand back," Luffy instructed, gently setting Nami down. "I'll try the direct approach." "Luffy, wait," Robin began, but he had already wound up his arm. "Gomu Gomu no pistol." His fist smashed into the rock formation with enough force to shatter ordinary stone. Instead, the entire structure lit up with the same blue glow they had seen in the temple, and the ground beneath Luffy's feet suddenly vanished, dropping him into darkness. "Luffy!" Robin cried, rushing to the edge of the newly formed hole. His voice echoed up from below, accompanied by a groan. "I'm okay. It's not that deep. Jump down." Robin hesitated only briefly before creating a chain of arms to lower herself safely into the hole. Nami and Chopper followed, with Chopper using his jump point to descend last, pulling the rock formation closed above them as best he could to hide their entry point. They found themselves in another tunnel, similar to the ones they had traversed earlier but narrower and with less illumination. Luffy was dusting himself off, looking annoyingly pleased with his unconventional entry method. "See? Problem solved." Robin couldn't help but smile despite the danger. His confidence was infectious, even when, perhaps especially when, the situation seemed dire. "Which way do we go?" Nami asked, looking down the tunnel that stretched in both directions into darkness. Robin considered their options. If the tunnels truly connect the entire island, any direction should eventually provide an alternative exit. The question is whether we want to return to the beach or seek refuge elsewhere until the Sunny can reach us. Let's head away from the beach for now, Luffy decided. Give the others time to break free. Then we can circle back. They set off down the tunnel, moving quickly but more cautiously than before. Without their guardian guide, they had no way of knowing what other security measures might be built into these ancient passages. After walking for perhaps 15 minutes, they came to a junction where the tunnel split into 3 branches. Robin created eyes down each path, but all appeared identical, smooth-walled corridors extending into darkness. Which way? Chopper asked nervously. Before anyone could respond, a tremor shook the tunnel, dislodging dust from the ceiling. That wasn't natural, Nami said, steadying herself against the wall. That felt like an impact. Another, stronger tremor followed, and Robin's created eyes detected movement from the tunnel behind them, the one leading back toward their entry point. We have company, she warned. Multiple pursuers, moving fast. Marines or Ouroboros? Luffy asked, already in a fighting stance. Robin focused her distant vision. Both. They appear to be working together for the moment, likely a temporary alliance to secure the key before resuming their own agendas. Pick a tunnel, quick. Nami urged. Luffy pointed to the rightmost passage. That one. Based on what? Nami demanded. Instinct, he replied with a grin. Before they could argue further, another tremor, much stronger than the previous ones, shook the entire structure. Cracks appeared in the ceiling, and Robin realized with alarm that whatever force was being applied above, likely Fujitora's gravity powers, was threatening to collapse the entire tunnel system. Run! Luffy shouted, grabbing Robin's hand and pulling her into the right passage as chunks of ceiling began to fall around them. They sprinted down the tunnel, dust and debris raining down as the tremors intensified. Behind them, Robin's created eyes witnessed the junction collapsing entirely, cutting off their pursuers but also their way back. We're trapped. Nami cried as they ran. We're alive, Luffy corrected. That's what matters. The tunnel began to slope steeply downward, taking them deeper beneath the island. The ambient lighting grew dimmer, then failed completely, leaving them in darkness. Stop! Robin called. We need light before we go further. Nami produced a small dial from her pocket, one of Usopp's inventions that generated a steady glow without heat. In its pale illumination, they could see that the tunnel ahead appeared to have suffered damage in the distant past, with sections of wall crumbled and support structures exposed. This part is much older, Robin observed, examining the construction. And it hasn't been maintained like the areas near the temple. Is it safe? Chopper asked worriedly. Another tremor answered his question, as a section of ceiling collapsed just meters behind them. Forward is our only option, Robin concluded. They continued their descent, moving more carefully now as the tunnel condition deteriorated further. Eventually, the passage opened into a vast underground chamber that drew gasps from all of them. Nami's light dial was insufficient to illuminate the entire space, but what they could see was breathtaking. The chamber appeared to be a docking bay of some kind, with the skeletal remains of vessels unlike any they had ever encountered. Not ships as they knew them, but sleek, cylindrical constructs of metal and other materials Robin couldn't identify. What are they? Chopper wondered, staring at the nearest vessel. Submersibles, perhaps, Robin theorized, her academic excitement momentarily overriding their perilous situation. The ancient kingdom was said to have mastered travel beneath the waves as well as above them. Cool, Luffy declared, already climbing onto the nearest vessel to explore. Think any of them still work? After 1,000 years? Unlikely, Nami said practically, though she too was examining the strange crafts with fascination. Robin approached what appeared to be a control panel near the chamber's edge. It was dead, of course, but the design was intriguingly similar to the pedestal in the temple where she had placed the Nexus key. A sudden intuition struck her. The key, she murmured, removing the cube from her bag. If these were built by the same civilization. Robin? Luffy had noticed her thoughtful expression. Got an idea? Perhaps. She examined the control panel more closely, finding a depression that, while not identical to the one in the temple, shared similar dimensions. The elders said the keys had secondary functions, smaller applications of the weapon's power. You think it might power up these old ships? Nami asked, catching on quickly. It's worth trying, Robin decided. We need an escape route, and the tunnels behind us have collapsed. Before she could place the key, however, a massive tremor shook the entire chamber, far stronger than any previous ones. Dust and stone rained down from the high ceiling, and a terrifying cracking sound echoed throughout the space. The chamber's collapsing. Chopper cried in alarm. Robin, try it now. Luffy urged, rushing to her side. With careful precision despite the chaos around them, Robin placed the Nexus key into the depression on the control panel. For a heart-stopping moment, nothing happened. Then, just as in the temple, blue light began to spread from the key through channels in the panel that had been invisible moments before. The light raced along the floor of the chamber, illuminating the entire vast space and revealing dozens more of the strange vessels than they had initially seen. As the light reached each one, systems began to activate, panels lighting up, mechanisms humming to life after a millennium of dormancy. It's working! Nami exclaimed in amazement. But their wonder was short-lived, as another violent tremor sent massive chunks of ceiling crashing down around them. A particularly large section crushed several of the ancient vessels, narrowly missing Chopper, who scrambled away just in time. We need to go now. Luffy shouted. Robin, grab the key. As Robin retrieved the cube, the nearest vessel's hull split open like the petals of a flower, revealing an interior compartment with seating and controls that, while utterly alien, somehow remained recognizable in their purpose. Get in. Luffy ordered, helping Nami and Chopper into the craft before turning to Robin. You too. What about you? She asked, suddenly afraid as she sensed what he was planning. I'll find another way out, he said, confirming her fears. Take the key and go. I'll keep them busy. No, Robin refused flatly. We stay together. That was the plan. The chamber shuddered again, more violently than before. Above them, a massive crack spread across the entire ceiling, seawater beginning to drip through in multiple places. Robin, please, Luffy's voice softened, his hand finding hers. The key's too important. If both of us get caught, then we both get caught, she finished firmly. I'm not leaving you, Luffy. Their eyes met in a silent battle of wills that might have continued indefinitely if not for a new development. The far wall of the chamber exploded inward with tremendous force, and through the dust and debris stepped a familiar figure, Admiral Fujitora, his blind eyes somehow fixed unerringly in their direction, his gravity powers manifesting as visible distortions in the air around him. Straw Hat Luffy, the Admiral's deep voice carried across the chamber. And Nico Robin. Surrender the artifact immediately. Behind him poured Marines and Ouroboros agents, an uneasy alliance of convenience fronted by Lysander and his red-haired companion. Last chance, Miss Nico, Lysander called. Give us the key, and perhaps the Admiral might be persuaded to be merciful with your companions. Luffy stepped forward, placing himself between their enemies and Robin. You want the key? Come and take it. He inhaled deeply, his body taking on the distinctive sheen of armament hockey. Robin, get in the ship thing. I'll handle this. Luffy, trust me, he said, not looking back at her but reaching one hand behind him. Please. That one word, please, was so uncharacteristic coming from Luffy that Robin found herself momentarily stunned. In that instant of hesitation, he made his move. With blinding speed, he grabbed the Nexus key from her hands and hurled it toward the vessel where Nami and Chopper waited. Go, he shouted, already launching himself toward their advancing enemies. Luffy, no. Robin cried, but it was too late. He had engaged both Fujitora and Lysander simultaneously, his rubber limbs a blur as he fought with the reckless courage that defined him. Robin, come on. Nami called desperately from the vessel. We can't help him if we're captured too. Logic warred with emotion as Robin watched Luffy battling against impossible odds. He was strong, arguably the strongest pirate of his generation, but even he couldn't defeat an admiral and the Ouroboros leadership simultaneously while protecting their escape. Torn between duty and love, Robin made her decision. I'm sorry, Nami, she said quietly, then crossed her arms in her signature pose. Cien fleur, wing. Arms sprouted from her back, forming wing-like appendages that would allow her limited flight. She had used this technique before, though never with such desperate purpose. Robin, what are you? Nami began, but Robin was already launching herself toward the battle, directly into the heart of danger. Mille fleur, gigantesco mano. Thousands of arms sprouted from the chamber floor, forming into two massive hands that swept through the ranks of Marines and Ouroboros agents, creating momentary chaos that allowed her to reach Luffy's side. I told you to go. He shouted, blocking a gravity-enhanced strike from Fujitora that would have crushed an ordinary pirate. And I told you we stay together, she replied calmly, her multiple arms deflecting attacks from all directions. Besides, they're after me as much as the key. This gives Nami and Chopper a better chance to escape with it. Luffy's expression shifted from frustration to determination. Fine. Then let's make this the best distraction ever. Together, they fought back-to-back against the overwhelming forces. Luffy's rubber body and advanced haki clashed with Fujitora's gravity manipulation, while Robin's multiple limbs kept the lesser opponents at bay. But for every enemy they disabled, two more seemed to take their place. We can't win this, Robin realized aloud, her stamina beginning to flag as she maintained multiple high-level devil fruit techniques simultaneously. Don't need to win, Luffy grunted, blood streaming from a cut above his eye. Just need to last long enough for the others to get away. But even as he spoke, a new tremor shook the chamber, the most violent yet. The ceiling began to collapse in earnest now, massive sections plunging into the underground bay. Seawater poured in through the growing gaps, the chamber rapidly flooding. Time to go, Luffy decided, grabbing Robin around the waist. Gomu Gomu no. Rocket. He stretched his other arm toward one of the intact ancient vessels, launching them both across the chamber away from their enemies. They landed hard on the vessel's open hull, Luffy immediately pushing Robin inside. Does this thing have a close button? He demanded, frantically examining the alien controls. The water was rising rapidly now, their enemies either retreating or being swept away by the flood. Fujitora's gravity powers were holding back some of the collapse, but even an admiral couldn't stop the sea itself once it had found a way in. There. Robin pointed to a pulsing blue symbol on what appeared to be the main control panel. That matches the opening sequence we saw. Luffy slammed his palm onto the symbol, and the petal-like hull sections began to close around them, sealing with surprising speed. Water sloshed against the transparent sections of the hull, rising past the midpoint of the vessel. How do we make it go? Luffy asked urgently, looking at the bewildering array of controls. Robin studied the panel, her archaeological training helping her identify patterns in the unfamiliar script. I think, this is the activation sequence. She pressed a series of symbols, and the vessel hummed to life, interior lighting brightening as systems engaged. But nothing else happened, they remained stationary as the water continued to rise. It's not moving. Luffy pointed out unnecessarily, pressing random controls in frustration. We need the key, Robin realized. Like with the control panel outside, it's the power source. But Nami and Chopper have it. In the other ship. Robin scanned the flooding chamber desperately, looking for the vessel their friends had entered. There, about 30 meters away, a similar craft with its hull still open, Nami and Chopper visible inside, seemingly struggling with their own controls. They can't close their hull, Robin understood immediately. Without the key, the systems won't fully activate. So we need to get to them before this place completely floods, Luffy summarized, already moving toward the hull section they just sealed. How do we open this thing again? Before Robin could answer, a massive section of ceiling crashed down directly onto the other vessel, crushing it completely. Nami! Chopper! Luffy screamed, pounding on the transparent hull section. Robin stared in horror at the destroyed craft, unable to process what she'd just witnessed. Their friends, the Nexus key, gone in an instant. But then, through the churning water, she spotted movement, a small form swimming desperately toward them, something clutched in its mouth. Chopper, in his brain point form, barely managing to stay above the rising water. There, she pointed. Chopper's alive. Luffy's face transformed from anguish to desperate hope. We have to get him in. Robin pressed the symbol that had closed the hull, and one section retracted just enough for Luffy to stretch his arm out into the water. He grabbed Chopper and yanked him inside just as another ceiling section crashed down where the reindeer had been moments before. Chopper! Are you okay? Where's Nami? Luffy demanded, cradling the soaking, coughing reindeer. Chopper spat out the Nexus key before collapsing onto the floor of the vessel. And Nami pushed me out, with the key, right before. He couldn't finish, tears mixing with the seawater on his fur. The implication was clear. Nami had sacrificed herself to save Chopper and the key, shoving them both out of the vessel moments before it was crushed. Robin felt numb as she took the key from the floor, forcing herself to focus on their immediate survival rather than the grief threatening to overwhelm her. We need to activate the vessel now. The chamber is almost completely flooded. With shaking hands, she inserted the Nexus key into a receptacle on the control panel that matched its dimensions perfectly. Immediately, the entire craft lit up with energy, controls becoming more distinct as systems fully engaged. How do we steer this thing? Luffy asked, his voice hollow with shock and grief. Robin examined the now illuminated controls, identifying what appeared to be a directional interface. I think, like this. She placed her hand on a smooth panel at the center of the controls, and the vessel responded immediately, rising from the chamber floor and stabilizing in the now almost completely submerged space. There must be an exit, she murmured, scanning the chamber walls. These craft were meant to leave from here. Chopper, still trembling but recovering his focus, pointed to the far wall. Look. That section's different. He was right. One section of the chamber wall featured a circular pattern unlike the surrounding stone, a massive door or hatch, now completely underwater. That has to be it, Robin agreed, guiding the vessel toward it. But how do we open it? As if in response to her question, the Nexus key pulsed with blue light, and the circular hatch began to iris open, revealing a dark tunnel beyond, an underwater passage leading away from the island. It's responding to the key, Robin realized. These vessels and the Nexus keys were designed to work together. Then let's go, Luffy said grimly, placing his hand over hers on the control panel. Before anyone else. He couldn't finish the sentence, but he didn't need to. The loss of Nami hung heavy in the confined space of the ancient vessel, a wound too fresh and deep to acknowledge fully while survival still remained uncertain. Together, they guided the craft through the opening and into the underwater tunnel beyond. Behind them, the last sections of the chamber ceiling collapsed, sealing the hatchway permanently in a cloud of debris and silt. They were committed now, to whatever path this ancient technology would take them, and to the burden of telling their crewmates what had happened to their navigator. The ancient vessel moved through the underwater tunnel with surprising speed and stability, its systems functioning perfectly despite their millennium of dormancy. Robin guided it as best she could, though much of the craft's operation seemed automated once they had entered the tunnel. Inside, silence reigned. Luffy sat with Chopper cradled in his arms, both of them staring numbly at nothing. Robin maintained her focus on the controls, partly out of necessity and partly to keep her own grief at bay. After what seemed like hours but was likely only 20 minutes, the tunnel began to slope upward. Light filtered down from above, natural sunlight refracting through water. "We're approaching the surface," Robin announced softly. The vessel emerged into open sea with barely a ripple, its design allowing for seamless transition between underwater and surface travel. Through the transparent hull sections, they could see they were now several kilometers from Raftel Minor, the mysterious island visible on the horizon behind them. And ahead of them, miraculously, the Thousand Sunny. "The Sunny!" Chopper exclaimed, the first words he'd spoken since telling them of Nami's sacrifice. "They got away." Indeed, their ship appeared to have broken free of the battle, though signs of damage were visible even from this distance. As they drew closer, Robin could see their crewmates on deck, Zoro at the helm, Sanji scanning the horizon with a spyglass, the others maintaining watch in all directions. "How do we signal them?" Luffy asked, some animation returning to his voice at the sight of their ship. Robin studied the control panel, identifying what might be a communication system. But before she could attempt to use it, Sanji had spotted them through his spyglass. The Sunny immediately changed course, heading directly toward their strange craft. As they drew alongside each other, Robin guided their vessel as close as possible to the Sunny's hull. The ancient craft had no obvious docking mechanism compatible with a modern ship, so they would need to jump across. Luffy didn't hesitate, stretching one arm to grab the Sunny's railing while holding Chopper securely with the other. "You first," he told Robin. "With the key." She nodded, securing the Nexus key in her bag before allowing Luffy to wrap an arm around her waist. With a practiced motion, he launched them both from the ancient vessel onto the Sunny's deck, where they were immediately surrounded by their crewmates. "Robin-chan." "Luffy." "Chopper." Sanji exclaimed, relief evident in his voice. "What the hell is that thing you were in? And where's Nami-san?" The question they had been dreading hung in the air as the crew registered that their navigator was missing. Luffy's expression darkened, and Chopper began to sob quietly. "Nami is..." Robin began, then found she couldn't continue. "She saved us," Chopper managed between sobs. "The chamber was collapsing, she pushed me out with the key right before our vessel was crushed." Understanding dawned on their crewmates' faces, followed by shock, disbelief, and grief in quick succession. "No," Sanji whispered, cigarette falling forgotten from his lips. "She can't be." "She is," Luffy confirmed, his voice hollow. "Nami's gone." The deck fell silent except for Chopper's quiet sobs. Each crewmember processed the news in their own way, Sanji turning away, shoulders shaking, Frankie wiping tears openly, Brook bowing his skeletal head, Usopp falling to his knees in disbelief, Zoro gripping his swords with white knuckles, face unreadable. "What happened?" Jinbe finally asked, his deep voice gentle despite the pain evident in his eyes. "Start from the beginning." Robin and Luffy took turns explaining everything, their discovery in the temple, the revelations about the Nexus keys and the ancient weapon, the attack on the island, their escape through the tunnels, and finally, the flooding chamber where Nami had made her sacrifice. "She didn't even hesitate," Chopper added quietly. "When the ceiling started to come down, she just pushed me toward the opening with the key and said, 'Go to Luffy and Robin.' That was it." Then everything collapsed. Another silence fell, this one filled with the weight of shared loss. Nami had been with most of them since the beginning, their navigator, their voice of reason, their friend. "What do we do now?" Usopp finally asked, his voice rough with emotion. All eyes turned to Luffy, who stood at the center of the deck, head bowed. This was the moment when a captain earned his title, by leading even through unbearable grief. Slowly, Luffy raised his head, his eyes meeting each of his crewmates in turn. "We keep going," he said quietly but firmly. "Nami gave her life to protect the key and what it represents. We honor that by finishing what we started." "And what exactly is that?" Zoro asked, not challenging but seeking clarity. We stopped the Ouroboros Society from collecting the other keys, Robin answered. We prevent the ancient weapon from being awakened or controlled. And we make sure Nami's sacrifice wasn't in vain. How? Sanji demanded, grief making his voice sharp. Those bastards have resources, manpower, and apparently the world government working with them sometimes. We're one crew, and now. He couldn't finish, the absence of their navigator too painful to articulate. We're the Straw Hat Pirates, Luffy said, a hint of his usual determination returning to his voice. We've faced worse odds. And we have something they don't, we know the truth about the keys and the weapon. Thanks to Robin and what she learned in that temple. All eyes turned to Robin, who straightened under the weight of their expectation. The weapon isn't meant to be awakened, she explained. The ancient kingdom created the Nexus keys as failsafes after realizing the weapon's power was too dangerous. We now possess one of those keys, the key of matter, and have denied it to our enemies. That gives us an advantage. But there are still 6 other keys out there, Jinbe pointed out. And the Ouroboros Society seems determined to collect them all. Then we find them first, Luffy decided. Robin, can you use what you learned to track down the other keys? Robin considered this. Perhaps. The map we saw in the temple showed their original locations, though they may have been moved over the centuries. And she hesitated, then decided to share what the elders had told her privately. The keys themselves have power, smaller applications of the weapon's abilities. This one can manipulate physical matter on a limited scale. I was given instructions on how to use it. This revelation created a stir among the crew, momentarily distracting them from their grief. So it's not just a key, but a tool we can use, Frankie surmised. Potentially, yes, Robin confirmed. Though I'll need to study the instructions carefully before attempting anything. Do it, Luffy ordered. We need every advantage. A new problem occurred to Robin. Without Nami, navigation will be challenging. Especially if we're searching for uncharted locations. The reminder of their loss brought the grief crashing back, but Jinbe stepped forward. I'm not Nami, he said solemnly, but I have navigated the Grand Line for decades. With Robin's knowledge of the key's locations, I can get us where we need to go. Luffy nodded gratefully. Then that's our plan. We find the remaining keys before the Ouroboros Society does. We keep them safe. We stop the weapon from being awakened. His voice hardened. And we make those responsible for Nami's death pay. The last sentence hung in the air, uncharacteristically vengeful coming from Luffy, who typically fought to protect rather than to avenge. But no one contradicted him. The loss of their navigator had wounded them all deeply, and justice, or retribution, seemed appropriate. As the crew dispersed to their duties, setting course away from Raftel Minor and the forces still battling there, Robin found herself alone at the stern, watching the mysterious island recede into the distance. So much knowledge lost, so much gained, and at such terrible cost. She felt rather than heard Luffy join her, his presence beside her now as familiar as her own heartbeat. I should have been faster, he said quietly, staring at the horizon. Should have gotten everyone out sooner. It wasn't your fault, Robin assured him, though she knew from experience that such comfort rarely eased the burden of leadership. Nami made her choice. She saved Chopper and the key because she understood what was at stake. She shouldn't have had to make that choice at all. His hands gripped the railing so tightly his knuckles whitened. I'm the captain. It's my job to protect everyone. Robin placed her hand over his. Even you can't control everything, Luffy. Not the sea, not fate, not the choices others make in moments of crisis. He turned to her, his eyes reflecting a pain deeper than she'd seen since Ace's death. I can't lose anyone else, Robin. Especially not, he broke off, but she understood what he couldn't say. Especially not you. You won't, she promised, though she knew it was a promise neither of them had the power to guarantee. In their world of constant danger, with enemies as powerful as those they now faced, death was always a possibility. Luffy seemed to read her thoughts. "I want you to teach me about the keys," he said, surprising her with the sudden change of subject. "Everything you know, everything you learn. I don't understand all the smart stuff like you do, but I need to know what we're fighting for. What Nami died for." Robin nodded solemnly. "I will. And together, we'll ensure her sacrifice wasn't in vain." He looked at her then with an intensity that took her breath away. "Robin," he said, his voice low and serious, "when this is over, when we've stopped the Ouroboros guys and made sure the weapon stays asleep, I want to make you the Queen of the Thousand Sunny." She blinked, uncertain if she'd heard correctly. "The Queen?" "Yeah," he nodded, as if it were the most natural thing in the world. "I'm gonna be king of the pirates someday. Every king needs a queen. Someone smart, who sees the things he doesn't. Someone who makes him better." His eyes held hers steadily. "That's you." The simplicity of his declaration, so utterly Luffy in its directness and lack of pretense, moved Robin more deeply than any elaborate proposal could have. This wasn't just about romantic partnership, though that was certainly part of it. This was Luffy acknowledging what she had become to him, to the crew, to their shared journey, an essential counterbalance, wisdom to his instinct, caution to his recklessness, knowledge to his intuition. "I would be honored," she said softly, meaning it more than any words she'd ever spoken. "Though perhaps we should focus on surviving long enough for you to claim that title first." A ghost of his familiar grin appeared. "We will." I decided. And somehow, despite everything, the loss they'd suffered, the dangers ahead, the powerful enemies aligned against them, Robin believed him. Because that was Luffy's true power, greater than any devil fruit or haki, the ability to decide on an impossible future and then bend reality through sheer will until it came true. Days passed, then weeks. The Thousand Sunnies sailed through increasingly strange and uncharted waters as Robin, using the cryptic information from the temple combined with her own archaeological knowledge, guided them toward where she believed another Nexus key might be hidden. In the absence of their navigator, the crew had developed new rhythms and responsibilities. Jinbe handled the practical aspects of sailing, while Robin provided direction based on her research. The others maintained the ship and prepared for the inevitable confrontations that awaited them. Nami's absence remained a raw wound, her empty seat at mealtimes a silent reminder of their loss. Luffy had ordered her navigation equipment left untouched, her maps preserved exactly as she had left them. It wasn't a shrine, exactly, but an acknowledgement that some gaps could never truly be filled. Robin divided her time between navigational research and studying the crystalline device the temple elders had given her, the one containing instructions for using the Nexus key's inherent powers. The information was complex, written in the ancient script and filled with concepts that had no direct modern equivalent, but gradually she began to understand. The key manipulates physical matter at its fundamental level, she explained to Luffy one evening as they sat in the library, the cube between them on the desk. Not creating or destroying, the elders were clear that such power belongs only to the fully activated weapon, but rearranging, reshaping, transforming. Luffy poked the cube curiously. "So it's like a mini version of the big weapon?" "Exactly," Robin nodded, impressed by his intuitive grasp of the concept. "A fraction of its power, limited in scope and scale, but operating on the same principles. Have you tried using it yet?" She shook her head. "I wanted to understand it fully first. The instructions emphasize that intention matters, that the user's will shapes the key's effect. Used improperly, it could be dangerous. But you understand it now?" Robin hesitated. "I believe so, yes. The process involves focusing one's consciousness through the key while maintaining a clear visualization of the desired transformation." "Show me," Luffy requested, leaning forward with interest. After a moment's consideration, Robin placed her hands on either side of the Nexus key. The simplest application involves transforming one material into another of similar mass and elemental composition. She concentrated on a wooden paperweight on the desk, a simple sphere Frankie had crafted to hold down maps in windy conditions. Focusing her will through the key as the instructions described, Robin envisioned the wood's molecular structure rearranging, fibers realigning, density increasing. The Nexus key began to glow with that now familiar blue light. The paperweight trembled slightly, then visibly transformed, the grain patterns shifting, the color darkening, the surface taking on a subtle luster, until what had been plain wood was now polished ebony. "Whoa!" Luffy exclaimed, picking up the transformed object and turning it in his hands. "That's so cool. Can you turn anything into anything?" "There are limitations," Robin cautioned, though she couldn't help feeling pleased by his enthusiasm. "The mass must remain relatively constant, and the elemental composition can't change drastically. I couldn't turn wood into gold, for instance, because they're fundamentally different materials. But you could turn wood into different wood, or stone into different stone." "Precisely. And with practice, more complex transformations might be possible." She took the paperweight from him, examining her handiwork. "The power is subtle but potentially quite useful. Could you use it in a fight?" Luffy asked with characteristic pragmatism. Robin considered this. "Possibly, though it requires concentration that might be difficult to maintain in combat. And it's not instantaneous, you saw how it took several seconds for the transformation to complete." "Still useful," he decided. "Keep practicing. We'll need every advantage against the Ouroboros guys." Robin nodded, replacing the paperweight and the key. "I will. Though I'm concerned about using it too frequently. The elders implied that the keys can be detected when active. It's how the Ouroboros Society and the Marines found us at Raftel Minor. So it's a last resort," Luffy concluded. "Something we save for when we really need it." "Yes. And speaking of really needing things." She unfolded a chart she had been working on, spreading it across the desk. "I believe I've located the next key." Luffy leaned forward eagerly. "Where?" "Here," she pointed to a small island chain near the calm belt. "What modern maps call the Boiling Archipelago, named for the thermal vents that keep the surrounding waters at near boiling temperatures." "Sounds hot," Luffy observed unnecessarily. "Indeed. It makes the islands nearly inaccessible by conventional means, which would make it an ideal hiding place for something as valuable as a Nexus key. But how do we get there if the water's boiling?" Robin smiled. "That's where our ancient vessel comes in. Its hull appears impervious to extreme temperatures, likely designed specifically for environments conventional ships couldn't navigate. After their escape from Raftel Minor, they had towed the ancient submersible alongside the Sunny, with Frankie utterly fascinated by its technology. The cyborg shipwright had spent days studying its systems, eventually determining how to operate it without the Nexus key, though its full capabilities remained accessible only when the key was inserted. "So we take the submarine thing to the hot islands," Luffy surmised. "Who goes?" "A small team would be best," Robin suggested. "You and I, certainly, since I can read any inscriptions we find and you're our strongest fighter. Perhaps Jinbe as well, given his affinity for water environments, even extreme ones." Luffy nodded in agreement. "We'll tell the others tomorrow. If you're right about the key being there, we should move fast before the Ouroboros Society figures it out too." As he stood to leave, Luffy paused, looking down at Robin with an uncharacteristically hesitant expression. "Robin, about what I said before. About making you the queen when this is over." She looked up at him, surprised by his sudden uncertainty. "Yes. I've been thinking," he continued, rubbing the back of his neck. "We shouldn't wait." Robin raised an eyebrow. "What do you mean?" "Life's short," he said simply. "Nami taught us that. We shouldn't wait for some perfect future moment that might never come." He moved around the desk to stand before her, taking her hands and pulling her gently to her feet. "I want the crew to know, officially, that you're not just my girlfriend or my archaeologist. You're my partner. In everything. The earnestness in his eyes took Robin's breath away. This was a side of Luffy few ever saw, the thoughtful, deeply feeling man behind the carefree, adventure-seeking exterior. "What exactly are you proposing?" she asked softly. "A ceremony," he answered. "Nothing fancy or complicated. Just us and the crew. Me telling everyone that you're the queen of the thousand sunny, my queen. Equal to me in every way." Robin felt a warmth spreading through her chest at his words. Equal to the future pirate king? That's quite a promotion. He grinned, some of his usual light-heartedness returning. "You were always my equal, Robin. I'm just making it official." She studied his face, this young man who had saved her in every way a person could be saved, who had given her a home and a family when she believed such things forever beyond her reach. Who now offered her a place beside him not as subordinate but as partner, not as subject but as co-regent. "Yes," she said simply. "I would like that very much." His smile could have outshone the sun. "Tomorrow, then. Before we head to the boiling islands. We'll do it at sunset." And with that settled, as if they'd merely decided on tomorrow's breakfast rather than a life-changing ceremony, he kissed her briefly but tenderly before bouncing out of the library with renewed energy. Robin remained behind, fingertips touching her lips, marveling at how Monkey D. Luffy could make even the extraordinary seem perfectly natural, whether declaring war on the world government, hunting ancient weapons, or proposing a partnership that defied all pirate convention. Tomorrow, she would become Queen of the Thousand Sunny. The thought both terrified and exhilarated her. But then, all the best adventures did. The next evening, as the sun began its descent toward the horizon, the crew gathered on the Sunny's lawn deck. Despite their ongoing grief over Nami's loss and the dangers they knew lay ahead, there was a tangible sense of anticipation in the air. Luffy had been surprisingly secretive about the exact nature of the ceremony, disappearing with Frankie and Usopp for several hours during the day to prepare. Robin, too, had been sequestered, Sanji insisting that tradition demanded she not see whatever preparations were underway. Tradition? She had questioned with amusement. What tradition? This isn't exactly a conventional situation. I'm making it up as I go, the cook had admitted with a small smile, the first genuine one since Nami's death. But every queen deserves some mystery and anticipation before her coronation. Now, as Sanji escorted her onto the deck where the others waited, Robin was glad she had humored him. The Sunny had been transformed in ways both simple and touching. Lanterns hung from the rigging, their soft light complementing the golden glow of the setting sun. The lawn had been cleared, creating a central space where Luffy stood waiting. But it was Luffy himself who drew and held her attention. Gone were his usual shorts and vest, replaced by a more formal outfit that still managed to be quintessentially him. He wore dark trousers and a deep blue coat with gold trim that reminded Robin of the pirate captains of old. His straw hat remained, of course, nothing could separate Luffy from his treasure, but someone, likely Brook, with his eye for such details, had added a small red ribbon around its band. He looked, Robin realized with a mixture of amusement and genuine admiration, rather like a pirate king already. As she approached, the crew parted to create a path. Robin was conscious of their eyes on her, approving, supportive, family. Sanji had convinced her to wear one of the few dresses she owned, a simple but elegant affair in deep purple that complemented her coloring. Her hair was adorned with small white flowers that Chopper had carefully selected from the ship's garden. When she reached Luffy, he took her hands in his eyes wide with unconcealed appreciation and something deeper, a warmth and certainty that steadied her. "You look beautiful," he said simply. "As do you, Captain," she replied with a small smile. "This is quite the production for something not fancy or complicated." He grinned sheepishly. "The others got excited once I told them what we were doing. Couldn't say no." Jinbe stepped forward then, clearing his throat. As the most senior and experienced member of the crew, he had apparently been selected to officiate. "We gather here today, the fishman began, his deep voice carrying easily across the deck, to witness a union unprecedented in the annals of piracy. Not merely the joining of two individuals, but the formal declaration of a shared leadership, a partnership between our captain and the woman who has become essential to our crew's journey. Robin felt a lump form in her throat at Jinbe's eloquent words. Beside her, Luffy squeezed her hands gently. The title of Pirate King has historically been viewed as a solitary achievement, Jinbe continued. One individual standing at the pinnacle of our world. But Monkey D. Luffy has never been one to follow historical precedent. This earned a chuckle from the crew, breaking some of the ceremony's tension. In choosing to name Nico Robin as Queen of the Thousand Sunny, as his equal partner in leadership and life, our captain once again demonstrates the wisdom that has guided us through countless challenges. For true strength lies not in standing alone, but in recognizing and honoring the bonds that make us greater than the sum of our parts. Jinbe turned to Luffy. Captain, would you speak your intentions? Luffy straightened, his expression shifting to the serious intensity he showed in moments of true importance. Robin saved my life the day we met, he began, his voice clear and steady. Not just by pulling me out of the sand where Crocodile had buried me, but by showing me a kind of strength I hadn't seen before. The strength to survive no matter what, to keep fighting even when the whole world was against her. Robin felt tears threatening at the unexpected depth of his words. This wasn't the impulsive, often inarticulate Luffy the world knew. This was the Luffy she had come to love, perceptive, genuine, seeing through to the heart of things in his uniquely direct way. When she joined our crew, I got a nakama who could read poneglyphs and fight really well, he continued with a small smile. But what I didn't know then was that I was getting something more important, someone who would see things I couldn't, understand stuff I didn't, and make me a better captain because of it. He squeezed her hands again. That's what a queen is supposed to do, I think. Not just stand beside the king looking pretty, but make decisions with him, fight beside him, sometimes tell him when he's being an idiot. This drew another laugh from the crew, louder this time. Even Robin couldn't help but smile. So I'm not waiting until I find the One Piece or get some fancy title, Luffy declared. I'm making Robin my queen now, today, because she already is in all the ways that matter. And I want everyone, our crew, our enemies, the whole world, to know it. Jinbe nodded, then turned to Robin. And you, Robin? Would you speak your acceptance of this role? Robin took a deep breath, gathering her thoughts. She had always been articulate, her words carefully chosen and precisely delivered. But now, facing the earnest openness of Luffy's declaration, she found herself wanting to match his honesty with her own. When I was a child, she began softly, I read about kings and queens in the history books of O'Hara. They seemed like distant figures from another world, symbols of power and privilege that had nothing to do with a girl who lived in the shadows, hunted and alone. The deck was utterly silent now, every crew member hanging on her words. Later, as I moved through the darker corners of the world, I saw power up close, the corrupt kings, the tyrannical leaders, the celestial dragons who called themselves gods. I learned that crowns and thrones meant nothing without the character to wield such authority with justice and compassion. She looked directly into Luffy's eyes now. When I met you, Luffy, I saw a different kind of power. Not the power to control or dominate, but the power to free. To protect. To inspire. You never called yourself a king, yet you've acted with more nobility than any monarch I've encountered. A single tear escaped, trailing down her cheek. You freed me from a prison I had built around myself. You declared war on the world rather than let me sacrifice myself. You showed me that family isn't determined by blood but by choice, by the willingness to fight for one another no matter the odds. Her voice strengthened. So yes, I accept the title of Queen of the Thousand Sunny. Not for the crown or the status, but for what it represents, a declaration that we face whatever comes together, as equals, as partners. That your strengths complement my weaknesses, as mine do yours. That neither of us stands alone anymore. A murmur of approval ran through the crew. Frankie was openly weeping, while Brooke played a soft melody on his violin that somehow perfectly captured the moment's emotional resonance. Jinbe nodded, clearly moved, then continued the ceremony. Do any among this crew wish to speak to the worthiness of this union? To Robin's surprise, Zoro stepped forward first. The swordsman rarely participated in the crew's more emotional moments, typically maintaining his stoic reserve. When Robin first joined us, he said bluntly, I didn't trust her. Thought she might be a spy or worse. He looked directly at Robin. I was wrong. You've proven yourself a true straw hat 100 times over. There's no one I'd rather have watching our captain's back, or, when necessary, stopping him from doing something stupid. His mouth quirked in a rare smile. Which happens more often than any of us would like to admit. One by one, the other crew members spoke, Sanji with flowery praise that somehow avoided his usual excessive flirtation, Chopper with simple, heartfelt gratitude for her friendship, Usopp with a surprisingly poetic tribute to her courage, Frankie with boisterous approval of the super partnership, and Brooke with a gentle acknowledgement of how she had helped him rediscover joy after decades of solitude. But it was Jinbe who delivered the most unexpected and moving tribute. In my long years at sea, the fishman said, I have served under great captains and fought alongside legendary pirates. But never have I witnessed a partnership with more potential to change our world than what stands before us now. He bowed deeply to both Luffy and Robin. The future pirate king and his queen. It is my honor to sail under your joint flag. With these acknowledgements complete, Jinbe raised his voice to address them all. Then, by the authority vested in me as former warlord of the sea, as helmsman of the Straw Hat Pirates, and as witness to this historic moment, I confirm and celebrate this union of equals. He turned to Frankie, who stepped forward with a small cushion upon which rested 2 items. The first was immediately recognizable, a delicate gold band that Robin suspected had been crafted from part of their treasure collection. But it was the second item that drew gasps from the crew. Is that, Usopp began in disbelief. Yep, Frankie confirmed proudly. Made it myself. A perfect miniature of Luffy's iconic straw hat, rendered in gold and suspended from a fine chain, a pendant small enough to be worn close to the heart, but unmistakable in its symbolism. Luffy took the ring first, sliding it onto Robin's finger with surprising gentleness. This means you're mine, and I'm yours, he said simply. Forever. Then he lifted the necklace, carefully placing it around her neck so that the tiny golden hat rested just below her collarbone. And this means you're my queen. Anyone who sees it will know. Robin touched the pendant with trembling fingers, overwhelmed by the significance. Luffy had never allowed anyone to wear his straw hat, even symbolically. That he would create this representation specifically for her spoke volumes about what this ceremony truly meant to him. I'll wear it with honor, she promised softly. Jinbe raised his hands. Then it is done. What we have witnessed here today marks a new chapter not just for the Straw Hat Pirates, but perhaps for the very concept of piracy itself. No longer one king standing alone, but king and queen together, combining strength with wisdom, courage with foresight, heart with mind. He addressed the crew. I call upon you all to acknowledge Nico Robin, Queen of the Thousand Sunny, partner to our captain in all things. The response was immediate and joyous, cheers, applause, Frankie's booming, super, cutting through it all. Brooke launched into a lively tune, and Sanji appeared with trays of food and drink prepared for the celebration. As the formal ceremony transitioned into a proper straw hat party, Luffy kept Robin close, his arm around her waist as they accepted congratulations from their nakama. There was laughter, music, feasting, a brief respite from grief and danger, a reminder of why they fought so hard to protect their strange, wonderful family. Later, as the celebration continued around them, Luffy led Robin to the figurehead, his special place that had increasingly become theirs. They sat together in comfortable silence for a moment, watching the stars emerge as the last rays of sunlight faded from the horizon. So, Robin said finally, a teasing lilt to her voice. Queen of the Thousand Sunny. What exactly are my royal duties? Luffy grinned. Whatever you want them to be. That's the point of being queen, you get to decide stuff. And if my decisions conflict with yours, Captain? He considered this with surprising seriousness. Then we figure it out together. That's what partners do. Robin leaned her head against his shoulder, feeling a contentment that would have seemed impossible during her decades on the run. I never imagined my life would lead here, she admitted softly. To this ship, this crew. To you. I did, Luffy replied with characteristic certainty. Not the details, but the feeling. I always knew I'd find the right people. That's the most important treasure, you know, not gold or even the One Piece. It's finding your people. The simple wisdom in his words touched her deeply. And now that you've found them. Now we have adventures together. We find the rest of those keys. We stop the bad guys from waking up the super weapon. We honor Nami's memory by living the way she'd want us to. He turned to face her, unusually solemn. And whatever happens, we face it together. King and Queen. That's the promise we made today. Together, Robin agreed, sealing the promise with a kiss that contained all the words they didn't need to say, the fear, the hope, the determination, and the love that had brought them to this point. Behind them, the celebration continued, their crew, their family, marking this moment of joy even amid grief and looming danger. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, as they set course for the boiling archipelago and the next Nexus key. The Ouroboros Society still hunted them, the world government wanted them captured or killed, and the ancient weapon slumbered beneath the waves, its power a temptation and a threat to the entire world. But tonight, under a canopy of stars on the deck of the ship they called home, the pirate king-to-be and his newly crowned queen allowed themselves to simply be Luffy and Robin, two people who had found in each other exactly what they needed, exactly when they needed it most. Together. As it was always meant to be. Across the Grand Line, in a chamber deep beneath Marie Joy's itself, the holy city of the world nobles, 5 elderly figures sat around a circular table. The 5 elders, the highest authority of the world government, studied reports of the battle at Raftel Minor with expressions of grave concern. So the Straw Hats possess one of the Nexus keys, the eldest said, his beard quivering with agitation. And worse, they now understand its true purpose. Nico Robin was always the greatest threat among them, another elder observed. Her ability to read the ancient language, combined with Monkey D. Luffy's uncanny ability to achieve the impossible, a troubling combination. More troubling still is their escape with the ancient vessel, a third added. That technology was supposed to be lost forever. If they can utilize it effectively. The question remains, the 4th elder interjected, do we continue our temporary alliance with the Ouroboros Society? Their goals align with ours only insofar as they seek the keys. Their intentions for them differ fundamentally. The 5th elder, who had remained silent until now, placed a folder on the table. We have confirmed reports that the Straw Hats are now headed for the boiling archipelago. Clearly, they believe another key is located there. And is one? The 1st elder asked sharply. A thin smile. Yes. The key of energy, controlling the power output aspects of the weapon. We've known of its location for centuries but judged it inaccessible due to the extreme environmental conditions. Conditions that their newly acquired ancient vessel might well overcome, the 2nd elder concluded grimly. We must act decisively. Agreed, the 1st elder nodded. Admiral Fujitora's failure at Raftel Minor cannot be repeated. Dispatch Admiral Kizaru to the archipelago immediately, with orders to retrieve the key and eliminate the Straw Hats by any means necessary. And the Ouroboros Society? A moment of consideration. Maintain the appearance of cooperation for now. Their resources and specialized knowledge remain useful. But make it clear to our forces that if a choice must be made between allowing the Society or the Straw Hats to obtain the key, the Society is the lesser evil. At least they can be monitored and potentially controlled. Unlike Monkey D. Luffy, The fifth elder mused, who has demonstrated time and again his total disregard for authority and order. Precisely. The son of Dragon, grandson of Garp, inheritor of the will of D, and now. The first elder tapped a different report on the table, this one containing fragmentary intelligence from spies who had observed the Thousand Sunny from a distance the previous evening. Apparently self-proclaimed king, with Nico Robin as his queen. A dangerous precedent, the third elder muttered. Pirates have never organized themselves in such formal power structures. If others follow their example, then we face not just individual threats but potentially organized pirate kingdoms, the first elder finished for him. All the more reason they must be stopped now, before their influence spreads further. The five elders stood in unison, their decision made. The order would go out immediately, Admiral Kizaru to the boiling archipelago, with whatever forces he deemed necessary to ensure success. The ancient weapon must remain dormant, the keys scattered or controlled by the government. The balance of power that had maintained the world order for 800 years could not be disrupted. Especially not by a rubber boy with delusions of kingship and the demon woman he had crowned as queen. The end. Thank you for watching this video. Please be sure to subscribe to our channel and like this video.